The boy had performed nothing more than a simple, quick draw slash. Yet, it left even the woman known as the Sword Saint in stunned silence. At first glance, it appeared that Ronan had only swung once. In truth, he had struck 3 times. He had even slowed the final strike to a crawl, as if he were afraid the professors at the Empire's premier academy wouldn't be able to see it. That arrogant move sent the Sword Saint into a furious rage. She demanded to know who had taught him that swordsmanship. Ronan had never received any formal training. Everything he knew had been forged through hundreds of battles in his previous life. The reason he managed to return to this point in time was a woman's kiss. It all began when 3 incredibly powerful 4-winged giants suddenly descended upon the world. They rampaged across the Empire without restraint, destroying more than half of its territory in just 1 week. To stop the giants, the entire punitive core unit in which Ronan served was wiped out. After Ronan pushed himself to the limit and defeated the last giant, his life finally came to an end. Ronan stood alone, staring at the horrific scene before him, his heart hollow with despair. Suddenly, a strange voice rang out. "It is I, Ahayut. One oversight. I never expected to find a human as powerful as you here." Ronan whipped around in shock, only to realize the voice was coming from the giant that was supposed to be dead. Furious, Ronan stomped down hard on its face. "You transformed half the Empire into a wasteland of graves. How are you still alive?" Ronan curled his lips into a mocking smile. The fates of the other 2 giants remained shrouded in mystery. Their deaths were marked by epic battles in tragic circumstances, leaving behind tales of their immense power and the consequences of their actions. Each story adds to the legend of these formidable beings, weaving a rich tapestry of heroism and loss. One was reduced to ashes by the flames of the Crimson Dragon, while the other was sealed away forever by a powerful mage. Ronan believed those words would finally provoke the giant. It showed no surprise at all. Powerful human, do not use shallow words to convey the truth. The children of the stars share their senses. I know how they died, and I also know that those who fought against them were completely annihilated. There is no one left in this land as strong as you. Therefore, the world you fought to protect will ultimately be drowned in starlight." Before it could finish speaking, Ronan severed its head with a single slash. Ronan began to wander aimlessly, wanting to take in the world a little longer before his final moments arrived. Just as he was sinking into grief, he thought he heard a faint cry for help, so Ronan dragged his heavily wounded body toward the sound. However, the person he found left him utterly stunned. To his surprise, General Adeshin was still alive, which provided Ronan with the first small trace of comfort he had felt. As soon as she saw Ronan, the general hurriedly asked if they had won the war. When she learned that Ronan had slain the last giant, a wave of relief washed over her. "Thank you, Private First Class Ronan, truly." Hearing this, Ronan seized the opportunity to make a request. "If you're truly that grateful, could you ensure my comrades are buried properly? In the past, the bodies of punitive core soldiers were always discarded, but this time they fought bravely. I believe they deserve an honorable burial." At that, the general admitted she was barely hanging on herself, so it would be better for Ronan to handle the matter personally. As soon as she finished speaking, Ronan was seized by a violent coughing fit. "You may be overestimating me a bit," he said. "In my condition, I'm just hanging on second by second. It's a shame there are still so many things I never got to do." Hearing this, the general asked what Ronan would want to pursue if he could somehow survive. At that question, a faint spark lit up in Ronan's eyes. "I'd probably go study at the academy. That was the wish my late sister left behind. But it seems that won't be the case. My family is about to be reunited once more." The moment those words left his mouth, the sky suddenly cleared, and a few rays of dawn broke through the clouds. However, instead of feeling relief, both of them widened their eyes in horror. Hanging in the sky was an 8-winged giant. The 4-winged giants they had fought to the death were not the limit of these monsters after all. The true peak was 8 wings. The general's expression shifted. She quickly gathered her thoughts and nodded, realizing that Ronan's bravery ignited a spark of hope within her. With a steady voice, she began to chant the levitation spell, channeling her magic to lift him into the air. As Ronan ascended, the sight of the 8-winged giant looming above them only fueled his determination. He gripped his sword tightly, ready to confront the overwhelming odds. The general watched, her heart racing, as he prepared for the battle that could change everything. She sprang to her feet, kissed Ronan, and pushed a bead into his mouth. "This bead has the power to turn back time 4 times. I've already used it 3 times. It's the secret that allowed a little seamstress like me to rise to the rank of general. I'm giving you one last chance. I believe you hold the key to preventing the end of the world. If we ever meet again, please persuade me to live honestly as a tailor." When Ronan opened his eyes again, he discovered he was back in the hometown of his youth. As he surveyed the familiar scenery around him, he struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. The general had been telling the truth. There were still 10 years left before the giants descended. But could he truly accomplish this all on his own? Suddenly, an idea struck him. If all of this was real, didn't that mean he could see his sister again? Without hesitation, he grabbed a tree branch and raced toward home. Along the way, a gang of local thugs caught his attention. But when he looked closer, Ronan was stunned. The child being bullied wasn't hanging from a rope at all. Someone was using magic to suspend him in midair. Ronan could hardly believe it. Even on the battlefield, someone with that level of skill would be considered a rare, high-level talent. Yet here, in a tiny backwater village, someone was wielding such an uncommon spell. The blonde punk at the front demanded to know if the boy had any money left, and the boy replied that every last coin had gone toward medicine for his mother. Upon hearing that, the blonde thug erupted in a fit of rage. He immediately ordered the boy using magic to lift the child back into the air. However, kind-hearted Asher clearly hesitated to comply. Before Asher could even cast the spell, Ronan struck him on the head with the branch. "If you don't stop now, that kid's going to die." Asher quickly lowered the boy back down upon hearing that. However, the burly blonde thug wasn't having it. He demanded that you stop. "And you actually did? You little punk, are you implying that I don't matter?" Ronan, however, grabbed Asher and pulled him closer. "Forget this trash for now. Tell me, where did you learn your telekinesis magic?" Asher timidly explained that he had taught himself using a spell book he purchased from a traveling merchant. That left Ronan stunned. He couldn't believe that someone could achieve this level of power using nothing but a cheap spell book. His instincts told him that Asher would undoubtedly play a role in the fight against the giants one day. At that moment, the furious blonde thug drew his weapon. Gripping it tightly, he swung it directly at Ronan. Ronan immediately recognized his weakness. The strike had power, but the form behind it was a complete disaster. Ronan calmly shifted to the side, avoiding it with ease. Seeing this, the blonde thug began to panic slightly, but he quickly convinced himself it was just luck. "Looks like you got lucky and dodged that one. Get on your knees and beg, and I'll only take one of your arms. I might even let you live. I'll make sure to take real good care of that pretty sister of yours. Every time I see her, I can barely hold myself back." Before he could finish, one of his ears went flying. Ronan hadn't been this furious in a long time. His sister was the one line no one was allowed to cross, and he would never let anyone defile her. The scene terrified the surrounding lackeys. He had used nothing but a tree branch, yet it carried the force of a true sword strike. Realizing they were completely outmatched, they surrendered all the money they had to the boy. Then they ran off with their tails between their legs. After that, Ronan unilaterally scheduled a meeting with Asher for 3 days later at the same location. He made it clear that if Asher didn't show up, he would personally come looking for him. It wasn't long before Ronan finally returned home. However, when he reached the door, he hesitated and couldn't bring himself to go inside. He didn't know how to face his sister or what he was supposed to say. In his previous life, Ronan had left home without a word and never had the chance to see her one last time. When Ronan finally stood before his sister again, he said simply, "I'm home." He then handed her the flowers she loved the most. His sister was overwhelmed with joy. She never imagined that, in this lifetime, she would one day receive flowers from her little brother. That stubborn, prideful kid from back then had actually come this far. In her excitement, she immediately asked Ronan if he wanted her to prepare a few more dishes. Ronan glanced at the absurd spread before him, 18 dishes and a soup, and quickly waved both hands in refusal. After the meal, he finally told his sister that he wanted to attend the academy. The moment she heard this, her face lit up with joy as she repeatedly asked him if he was truly serious. Sending Ronan to the academy had been her dream for a long time. Once she received his confirmation, she skipped all the way to a corner of the house. After rummaging around for a while, she finally dragged out a huge jar filled to the brim with gold coins. Ronan was stunned and quickly asked where all that money had come from. Puffing up with pride, his sister placed her hands on her hips. "I saved it all to surprise you, so that the moment you decided to go to the academy, you'd be able to leave right away." Ronan could only smile awkwardly and admit that it still wasn't nearly enough, urging her to keep the money for herself. The academy he wanted to enter was the Empire's most prestigious institution, the Royal Filian Academy. It boasted the finest professors on the entire continent, supported by the substantial financial backing of the royal family. Filian had the strictest admission standards and tuition fees that were practically outrageous. Additionally, it was the academy that General Adeshan had personally recommended to him. 3 days later, Ronan arrived at the location where he had arranged to meet Asher. As soon as they met, Ronan got straight to the point, expressing his desire to run a few tests on him that night. More specifically, he wanted Asher to use his telekinesis at full force so he could determine exactly where Asher's limits lay. Asher quickly grew nervous and hesitated to act. However, under Ronan's pressure, he ultimately had no choice but to use his telekinesis magic on him. Having experienced it for himself, Ronan was genuinely surprised. This guy was even more impressive than he had anticipated. Stability and height control were still lacking, but the sensation was nearly identical to that of the final battle. Back then, several mages had to lift him to giant height for him to unleash his full power. Ronan felt a surge of excitement. Mages were rare, and someone with telekinetic talent was even rarer. He had truly made an incredible start. Meanwhile, Asher was on the brink of collapse, his hands trembling. As he spoke, Ronan unsheathed his sword and slashed directly at the telekinetic force. To Asher's shock, Ronan actually severed his magic in half. Asher stared in utter disbelief. He had never even heard of magic being cut apart before. Ronan offered no explanation, telling him to think of it as one of his secret techniques. The truth was that even Ronan himself did not fully understand it. His sword could not only cut through magic, but could also wound a Hayyut, the giant whom even the Sword Saint had failed to injure. Unraveling the mystery behind that power was one of the main goals of his reborn life. But that could wait. Right now, something more important took priority. Ronan tossed his bag to Asher and said, "Move. We have something to finish before sunrise. It's the condition we need to reach Filion." Asher stood there in shock. Wait, did I hear that right? Ronan, are we really talking about Filion Academy? The one where all the elite of the empires gather? Ronan looked puzzled. What? You don't want to go? That's not the issue at all. Ronan, you have incredible swordsmanship, so getting in won't be a problem for you. But me? I have nothing. Instead of comforting him, Ronan responded in a stern voice, "Do you really want to keep living like this and waste your whole life away? Are you truly willing to waste your talent just to keep bowing down to a bunch of street trash? A real man changes when he recognizes what he's missing. Coming to Filion with me is the perfect first step. Otherwise, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Those words struck a chord with Asher. It was the first time anyone had shown genuine concern for his future, and he quickly agreed. Seeing this, Ronan broke into a sly grin. Everything was unfolding just as he had hoped. Shortly after, he led Asher to a camp. Inside, dozens of goblins lay fast asleep. They were a variant species of goblin known as Luna goblins, obsessed with gold and treasure. This obsession drove them to raid merchant groups and wealthy caravans in search of valuable loot. Every full moon, they would gather all their loot and hold a celebration. Ronan's target tonight was the stash of treasure they had accumulated. All he needed to do was use his telekinesis to move the treasure into the bag, piece by piece. Sounds easy, right? Asher was instantly terrified. If they wake up in the middle of this, we're dead. We should go back first and come up with another plan. Hearing that, Ronan snapped in irritation, asking when his companion would finally grow out of that cowardly streak. To enter Filion, we need two things. First, funding, and second, genuine combat experience. This job provides us with both opportunities at once. After a long session of Ronan drilling him, Asher finally began to use his magic with trembling caution. Before long, he had transferred every last bit of the Luna Goblin's hoard. Just like that, the issue of tuition for both of them was essentially resolved. Watching Asher practically buzzing with excitement beside him, Ronan couldn't help but praise him. Even he hadn't expected Asher to adapt so well to real combat. He had truly stumbled upon a gem. Just as the two of them finished packing and were preparing to leave, a thunderous shout suddenly echoed from nearby. Ronan immediately sensed trouble on the horizon. His luck was as dismal as always. Sure enough, the noise jolted every sleeping goblin in the camp awake. The first thing they did upon opening their eyes was look toward the treasure chests. Before Ronan and Asher could get very far, a whole mob of goblins had already spotted them. Enraged, the goblins grabbed their weapons and charged straight at them. Asher collapsed to the ground in terror. "What do we do, Ronan? Shouldn't we just drop the treasure and run?" Ronan rejected the idea outright. Instead, he lowered his gaze and carefully examined the sword he had taken from the blonde thug. Judging by the weight and durability of the blade, he estimated it could handle about 15 swings. Then he looked up and counted the number of goblins, around 30. After making that calculation, Ronan curled his lips into a faint grin. 15 swings would be enough. In the next moment, he drew his sword and stepped forward. With a single swing, he unleashed 3 distinct slashes. He charged into the goblin pack like a bolt of lightning, and within just a few breaths, all 30 goblins lay defeated. The entire scene left Asher in utter shock, so stunned that he couldn't even react. Ronan, on the other hand, relaxed his body slightly, quietly reflecting that his current strength was still far too lacking. Once he returned, he would enter a proper trance. At that moment, an arrow whistled through the air, coming straight at Asher from behind. Fortunately, Ronan's quick reflexes allowed him to snatch it out of the air just in time. Moments later, two figures appeared in the distance. They claimed to have mistaken Ronan and Asher for prey, yet there was not a trace of apology on their faces. Their eyes were greedily fixed on the bags behind them. Ronan openly displayed his contempt. "You two are terrible actors. So who exactly are you?" Realizing their little act had been exposed, the two men exchanged awkward glances for a moment. One of them stepped forward with a grin and began to introduce himself, but as soon as he got close enough, he suddenly pulled out a dagger. Ronan was attacked, but he quickly neutralized the strike with ease. "We're Caribou," his assailant sneered. "You picked the wrong people to mess with, brat." As Ronan recalled the true nature of the Caribou group, anger flashed across his face. "So, you're the ones responsible for this mess." Sensing that things had gone awry, the other man lunged at Ronan, completely ignoring Asher at his side. In an instant, Asher immobilized him with telekinesis. Witnessing this, Ronan felt a genuine sense of satisfaction. It was no wonder he had taken a liking to Asher. Seizing the moment, Ronan snatched the dagger straight out of the first man's hand. In an instant, he unleashed dozens of slashes. Before the man could utter another word, his body was shredded into countless chunks of flesh. Asher felt a chill run through him as he witnessed the gruesome scene. Did it really have to go that far? Ronan, however, felt no concern at all. They had come here with the intention of killing me. Why would I show them mercy? More importantly, they belonged to the notorious Caribou. This poaching gang burns, kills, steals, and takes whatever they desire. Allowing scum like that to escape would be the true crime. Suddenly, the bags that the two thieves had been carrying began to shake violently. With curiosity, Ronan untied the rope. In the next instant, a bird-like creature shot straight out. Upon closer inspection, it revealed itself to be a blue bird, its eyes sparkling with striking intelligence. Asher was instantly captivated by how adorable the creature was. Then Ronan noticed a chain around its leg. It was the kind of shackle used by Caribou to capture fantasy species, a restraint designed to seal the target's magic. While the two were still pondering its significance, a voice suddenly emerged from the blue bird. Asher jumped in fright. "That bird can actually talk?" Ronan looked annoyed instead. Clearly, this was long-range communication magic. The one speaking must be its owner. "Hello, my name is Baron. I research fantasy species in the Imperial capital, and I'm also the guardian of this dream bird. It suddenly disappeared last night, and I haven't been able to locate it despite my efforts. I know this is abrupt, but may I ask who you are?" In response, Ronan briefly explained what had happened. After finishing, he casually sliced through the shackles on the Dreambird's leg with a single slash. That act deeply moved the Dreambird. It immediately flew up in front of Ronan, wiggling its rear excitedly. Fortunately, Baron quickly explained that it wanted him to pluck one of its feathers before it flew away. Dreambird feathers have a unique trait. They point toward the bird's main body like a compass. It seems that Ophi really likes you. Once you reach the Imperial capital, you can use that to find me. It will give me a chance to repay you properly. The moment he finished speaking, Ophi shot off toward the Imperial capital like an arrow released from a bow, leaving Ronan staring in disbelief at the speed of her departure. It was only when Asher pointed it out that Ronan realized Ophi had left something in his hand. Early the next morning, Ronan and Asher gathered the spoils from the night before and made their way to the marketplace. After examining the item for an extended period, a merchant valued the necklace in his hand at 20 gold coins. Only then did Ronan finally show a satisfied smile. Compared to this merchant group, the ones he had dealt with before had been practically scammers. After selling off all the treasure, they finally managed to gather enough money for Filian's exorbitantly expensive tuition. Ronan took out an egg-shaped object and asked the merchant to identify it. This was the item the dream bird had left behind before it flew away. At first, Ronan genuinely believed the bird had dropped a lump of droppings into his hand. He immediately hurled it away in disgust. To his surprise, the object was completely undamaged, while the boulder it struck shattered into pieces. Nevertheless, after studying it for quite some time, the well-traveled merchant could only scratch his head awkwardly and admit that he had no idea what it was. Ronan let out a helpless sigh, realizing he would have to wait until he reached the Imperial capital to ask Baron in person. After that, Ronan asked the merchant if he had any books about Filian Academy. The merchant's eyes lit up immediately. "Funny enough, my daughter's going to take the entrance exam for Filian as well." With that, he turned toward the market entrance and called out for his daughter. Before long, Maria appeared before them, wearing a puzzled expression. The moment Ronan heard her name, his entire body stiffened. He quickly walked over to her. "You really are Maria? The one whose middle name is Sane?" Maria blinked in confusion, then nodded and asked how Ronan knew that. Ronan did not answer. Instead, he fell into deep thought, because the Maria he remembered had clearly possessed the demeanor of a sharp, confident man. Ronan instinctively leaned close to her ear and whispered, Are you actually a man?" Maria stood frozen in place. She glanced down at her own body, which clearly resembled nothing like a man's, and began to wonder if Ronan had poor eyesight or if something was wrong with his mind. Meanwhile, Ronan remained lost in thought, and an attack suddenly came hurtling toward him. Furious, Maria swung her hand and smacked Ronan across the face with a resounding slap. Instead of reacting with anger, Ronan felt an unexpected sense of familiarity from the powerful hit. At that moment, Ronan was completely certain that the fiery-tempered woman before him was indeed the Maria he knew. She had once been the supply officer, while Ronan served as a punitive corps soldier in El Rain. Her decisive and straightforward nature made her well-liked, leaving a strong impression on Ronan. Maria had always had one peculiar quirk. Whenever the men began making crude jokes around her, she would explode with anger and slap every last one of them. That question had troubled Ronan for a long time. He had always believed that if they ever met again, he would certainly ask Maria why she had acted that way. Unfortunately, in his previous life, Maria had passed away before he did. Ronan never imagined that the answer to a mystery that had haunted him for years would be revealed in this way, and he couldn't help but almost laugh. That little laugh, however, completely set Maria off. "It seems that lesson still wasn't enough for you, Brad." With that, she charged at Ronan once more. This time, Ronan offered her no opportunity to respond and slammed his fist directly onto her head. "You've seriously gone too far. I'll let you hit me once, but now you're pushing your luck." Instead of calming down, Maria only grew angrier the more she reflected on it. She suddenly thrust her head forward in a vicious headbutt aimed at Ronan's chin and shouted, "Yeah, I hit you. What are you gonna do about it?" At that moment, Ronan stopped holding back, and the two of them immediately began brawling for real. The sudden turn of events left the other two staring in complete disbelief. Once they regained their composure, they rushed over in a panic. "Stop! Both of you, stop fighting!" After much effort, they finally succeeded in separating them. Asher stared at the scene before him, utterly bewildered. Just moments ago, they had seemed ready to kill each other. Yet now they were sitting together, calmly discussing business. Ronan then pulled out 3 swords and a staff, asking Maria to assess their quality. Maria looked puzzled and replied, "Do you really need to carry 3 swords by yourself?" Ronan explained that he kept extra swords as backups, because he often pushed them to their limits in battle. After a brief pause, Maria pointed at one of the black blades and said, "All 3 of these swords are decent, but this black iron sword stands out as particularly impressive. Many renowned knights have sought weapons like this one." She then turned to Asher and said that the reason Ronan kept this staff must be because he was a rare mage. "What kind of magic do you use?" Hearing this, Asher's face lit up with delight. He shyly admitted that he only knew how to perform telekinesis. Maria's reaction was immediate and intense. "Telekinesis magic? If you excel, you might even qualify for a scholarship. Asher is basically a sure thing. But what about you, Ronan? Were you planning to put on a show during the skills exam?" Ronan blinked in confusion. Maria patiently explained that to gain admission to Philion, he would need to pass both the written test and the practical skills exam. The skills exam required candidates to demonstrate their abilities in front of the professors. Nobles typically showcased secret family techniques, while most martial applicants presented their unique methods of magic application or combat arts. Ronan frowned in confusion. If someone isn't a mage, how can they be using magic power at such a young age? Maria's eyes widened in shock as she tapped into the magic power we all know and control in actual combat. "Isn't that the most fundamental combat method? Surely you must know what magic sensing is." Ronan appeared completely lost. "Sensing magic? Doesn't that essentially mean the same thing as perceiving an aura?" That sentence made Maria completely lose her composure. She felt as if she were trying to explain calculus to a 3-year-old. After some reflection, Maria picked up Ronan's 2 short swords and resolved to put him through special training herself. Ronan sounded deeply reluctant. Those were the only 3 swords he owned, and if they were damaged, it would cause him great distress. So, Maria had no choice but to promise that if she broke them, she would pay him back 3 times their worth. Before that, she needed to clearly explain the basics to him. As everyone knew, magic power was the fundamental force behind all things. Like air, it existed everywhere in the world as a natural form of energy. However, not everyone could harness it. To manipulate magic power, one first had to see and sense their own abilities. This phenomenon was known as magic sensing. The time it took to reach this stage varied based on a person's training method, talent, and other factors. However, under normal circumstances, most individuals could sense magic after approximately 1 year of practice. Anyone hoping to enter Filion had to progress beyond that stage and become adept at skillfully using a personal method of magic application before they could even dream of knocking on Filion's door. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with shadows and secrets waiting to be uncovered. But Ronan, forget about sensing magic. You can't even distinguish between magical power and aura. Someone like you getting into Filion, that's pure fantasy. From one perspective, aura can indeed be considered a type of magical power. However, the gap between the two is worlds apart. Even geniuses recognized for their talent require at least 10 years of intense effort before they can master aura. After hearing Maria's detailed explanation, Ronan finally began to understand. Back on the battlefield, he had faced opponents like that before, individuals who referred to themselves as aura users. He had no idea they were such extraordinary figures. They had certainly been troublesome to deal with, but in the end, they all fell beneath his sword. Before Ronan could continue pondering, Maria interrupted. That's enough theory. Let's move on to the practical. Before the words had even finished leaving her mouth, Maria activated her magic-based combat technique and surged straight toward Ronan. Even Ronan felt his heart tighten a bit at that kind of speed. Even so, her sudden strike was met with ease. With a casual swing of his blade, Ronan pushed her back. Maria froze. She had planned to end the fight in a single move, convinced that a brat who didn't even understand magic could never make it into Filion. In her mind, it was better for Ronan to confront reality now than to embarrass himself during the exam. Yet, to her shock, she found herself completely overwhelmed by Ronan, who couldn't even use magic at all. While Maria was still distracted, Ronan struck again, sending her flying back over 2 meters. You're actually pretty strong. Setting magic aside, you have real talent with a sword. If you improve your control over your center of gravity, you'll get much better. With that, Ronan turned to leave, reminding Maria not to forget her promise. Feeling utterly belittled, Maria flew into a rage. You really think this means you won? But before she could continue speaking boldly, the short sword in her hand shattered into countless fragments. As Ronan's figure grew more distant, Maria stood there, completely frozen. Who exactly was this guy? By the next day, Ronan had received enough money to buy 3 new swords. Additionally, there was a collection of past written exam questions and key study notes that Maria had prepared for both of them. Maria had originally intended to tutor both him and Asher herself. However, the merchant caravan had to leave for another town on business, leaving her with no choice but to say goodbye early. In the days that followed, Ronan dedicated every day to studying for the written exam. Every night, he hunted magical beasts to improve his stamina and restore his body to fighting shape. Before long, a full month had passed in the blink of an eye. Ronan and Asher finally arrived at Filion Academy, a place they had longed to be. They marveled at the palace-like grandeur of the building before them. Asher was completely stunned, unable to contain his amazement. Meanwhile, Ronan stood deep in thought, wondering if that person would also be a Filion. Perhaps he would see him during the exam. Just then, Asher leaned in and asked Ronan if he had brought the Dreambird's feather. Ronan had initially planned to search for Baron only after the exam was over. However, the moment he took out the feather, it began to shake violently, pointing directly at the building in front of them. At that same moment, Baron was just about to open the window for some fresh air when a face suddenly appeared right in front of him. The unexpected sight frightened both the man and the bird nearly to death. Trembling all over, Baron quickly pulled the dream bird into his arms. "Who are you? Don't tell me you're just another one of those bastards after Ophi." It was only when Ronan raised the feather high into the air that Baron suddenly realized who they were. "So, you're our benefactors." Ronan was equally surprised. He had never anticipated that the Dreambird's owner would be a rare lion beast man, and a fairly well-known professor at Filion, no less. After a brief exchange, Baron discovered that Ronan and Asher were both applicants for admission. He let out a sigh. "If I had known earlier that you two were candidates, I could have written you a recommendation letter. Still, you don't need to worry too much. Even if you don't make it in, I have ways to help you." Before he could finish, Ronan interrupted, clearly uninterested in hearing anything so ominous. He then handed over the egg that the Dreambird had left behind, explaining that Ophi had dropped it off before departing. When Ronan noticed Baron's expression becoming increasingly emotional after he took the egg, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. It was just a bird laying an egg. Was that really worth such shock? Baron responded with unusual seriousness, saying, "Of course it is. This is a Dreambird's egg. I can't even begin to predict what kind of little creature might hatch from it." Ronan rolled his eyes and replied, "What else is supposed to hatch from a bird egg except a bird? He shook his head. Dreambird eggs are far more complicated than that. A dreambird absorbs the inherent magic from its surroundings, or from the beings it encounters before laying an egg. For example, if an egg forms in a region of lava, it might hatch into a firebird, its entire body wreathed in flames. If a dreambird is born near a monster nest, what hatches could even inherit traits from a magical beast. Sometimes, what emerges from an egg may have little to do with birds at all. You might attempt to infer its future form from the magic seeping out of the egg. However, Ophi's egg is unique. It holds countless types of magic, all swirling and churning like molten iron in a furnace. At this moment, I can't say with any certainty what this egg will ultimately hatch into. Ronan was genuinely stunned after hearing that. He had never imagined that such a tiny egg could hold so much mystery. No wonder fantasy species were the stuff of legend. After a moment of contemplation, Baron awkwardly spoke up again, expressing his desire to entrust the egg to Ronan. Ronan appeared surprised. Shouldn't something like this be incredibly valuable? Baron acknowledged that it was indeed extremely valuable. A dreambird lays only one egg in its entire lifetime. However, if Ophi chose to leave something so precious with Ronan, perhaps it sensed something special in him. Ophi has been with me for many long years. I want to honor my friend's choice, so I hope you'll keep it safe. Ronan agreed immediately, intrigued by what the egg would eventually hatch into. Just as Ronan was about to stand up and leave, Baron stopped him and said, "I've been wondering how to repay you both. Since the egg is going with you, I just happen to have something that suits your situation perfectly." With that, he produced a scroll that detailed the location of a place that could be helpful for the egg. After parting ways with Baron, Ronan made his way to the practical exam grounds for the martial program. Sitting before him were the 5 professors responsible for this year's evaluation. At the center was Fillion's headmaster, the Grand Mage Creditet. The woman seated beside him was Nibberger, the swordsmanship instructor and former sword saint. The pressure Ronan felt from just their presence was already considerable. After steadying himself, Ronan bowed respectfully to the professors present. Following a brief exchange, they announced the details of the test. The magical combat training doll in front of you will be your opponent today. All you need to do is demonstrate your technique against it once. Upon hearing this, Ronan drew his sword and said calmly, "There's nothing especially fancy about what I'm going to show. It's just a quick slash." The moment he spoke, 2 of the professors erupted into laughter. Each year there were always applicants like this, those who glanced at the magical combat doll and made comments so absurd they were nearly comical. The doll's defense was robust enough to withstand aura attacks, and it also featured rapid self-repair capabilities. It was an exceptionally precise creation of magical engineering. Even Shuri Pan, celebrated as the greatest swordsmanship prodigy, had only just managed to leave a faint mark on it with her sword. The headmaster was taken aback, but what concerned him even more was the possibility that Ronan might lose his nerve after being ridiculed by the professors. In the very next moment, the headmaster's pupils dilated sharply. How could a child this young exude such a commanding presence? In the distance, Ronan had already assumed his stance. With a gentle push of his foot, he swung his sword at the doll with blinding speed. In a single instant, the slash was complete. Ronan then gave the professor's platform a small bow and declared, "My demonstration is finished." As soon as he said that, the 2 professors began mocking him once more. Unbelievable. He truly only showed one ordinary slash, which makes him quite difficult to score against. As he spoke, the blonde professor turned to the headmaster beside him, eager to hear his opinion, only to find the headmaster staring in complete shock. Meanwhile, Nibberger stepped onto the professor's platform with one foot. In the next instant, it shot straight toward Ronan. Right before everyone's stunned eyes, she pressed her blade against his neck. "Who taught you that swordsmanship?" Nibberger's chest heaved violently. Her voice was thick with rage that she could barely contain. Ronan looked completely baffled by her reaction. "What do you mean, who taught me? I have no idea what you're talking about." Nibberger then changed the question, asking, "Did you see what I just did?" Ronan replied honestly, "I did. Your swordsmanship is incredible. In less time than it takes to finish drawing once, you struck 3 times. Hearing this, Nibberger's mood lightened a bit. "Exactly. Just like what you demonstrated a moment ago." But then her tone suddenly changed. "You arrogant little, you even deliberately slowed down the last horizontal slash. Were you afraid we wouldn't catch your pathetic little trick? What do you think this place is?" Ronan felt a bit awkward because he had slowed down the last strike, not out of disrespect for the professors. He was concerned that the sword wouldn't withstand the blow, so he had intentionally reduced the force slightly. After all, it was the last sword he had left. However, facing the furious Nibberger in front of him, Ronan decided against offering an explanation. Even to himself, that excuse felt a bit implausible. Confronted with the situation, the headmaster was at a loss for words and could only awkwardly look away. The two professors who had been mocking him so openly lowered their heads, for the truth was that they had not seen a thing. After a brief silence, Nibberger withdrew her sword and slowly walked back to the professor's platform. Just when Ronan thought it was finally over, Nibberger suddenly turned back and glared at him, declaring, "I will personally teach you." As she stormed back to her seat in a fit of anger, the headmaster was stunned. Her words had made it clear that she had already decided to take the boy in as her disciple. "It seems I'll need to take this seriously as well." "Great job, Ronan. We have one final question to share. There's no right answer, so please respond with your genuine feelings." At Filion, the one thing I most want to learn is how to effectively harness my creativity to drive innovative solutions in my field. Ronan froze for 2.5 seconds as fragments of the past flashed through his mind. Then, with unwavering eyes, he answered, "I think I want to learn how not to live with regret." After Ronan left, the headmaster suddenly burst out laughing. "That's a hard question. I don't even know how I'd teach that," he admitted. Meanwhile, the blonde professor hurried over, asking what in the world had just happened. The headmaster did not respond. Instead, he lifted his gaze toward the magical combat doll in front of them. Everyone followed his line of sight, only to see a crack slowly forming across the doll that Ronan had struck. Then, with a deafening boom, the doll split cleanly in half. The two professors were utterly astonished. This was the first time the magical combat doll had ever sustained damage of that magnitude. Meanwhile, Ronan, who had already exited the testing grounds, continued to replay the events in his mind. Nieberger's presence and swordsmanship had made a lasting impression on him. Even before his return, he lacked confidence in his ability to defeat her. He had once thought of himself as battle-hardened, but now he understood that he still had a long way to go. With that thought, Ronan smiled faintly. The general had been right to send him to Filion. He was certain he would learn many valuable things here. With renewed confidence, Ronan made his way to the exam hall for the written test. After all, he had spent an entire month cramming desperately, and every point he studied was etched into his memory. However, when the exam ended, Ronan completely shut down. Seeing this, Maria and Asher looked utterly confused. "Didn't I tell you to read every book in the bag? How did you manage to cover less than 30% of the material?" Ronan initially took out only a few books to study, but he became so engrossed in them that he completely forgot about the large stack of books still inside the bag. Maria was left speechless. She had never imagined that someone could be this clueless. Seeing how devastated Ronan looked, she hurried to comfort him. "The practical exam matters far more than the written one. With your strength, you'll be just fine." Just then, a massive magic circle appeared out of thin air. Everyone rushed over in nervous anticipation, searching for their names. Before long, Maria and Asher discovered their own. Asher, from the Magic Division, ranked 12th in the practical exam while tying for first place in the written exam. Maria, from the Martial Division, ranked 9th in both the practical and written exams. After passing, the two hugged each other excitedly, overwhelmed that all their hard work had finally paid off. In her excitement, Maria turned to Ronan, eager to ask about his ranking. However, what she saw instead was Ronan standing there with a blank expression. "My name isn't on there," he said. Hearing that, both of them were stunned. "You got to be kidding. Are you sure you looked carefully?" Ronan insisted that he had checked dozens of times and hadn't even missed the corners. The moment he finished speaking, a thunderous explosion reverberated through the air. It was a special privilege of the Academy to recognize the top 3 students in each department. The Glorious Phoenix would use magic to announce its results. With a sharp cry, the Glorious Phoenix launched a fireball straight toward Ronan. When it exploded right in front of him, his results were displayed in bold letters. Martial Division, Practical Exam, Rank 1, Written Exam, Rank 5727 Holv, Overall Department, Rank 2. Maria and Asher screamed in excitement. "Ronan, you placed 2nd overall, just shy of your practical score." Even Ronan was shocked and couldn't help but praise the professor's sharp judgment. But then something suddenly struck him. Wait, if I ranked 1st in the practical exam, doesn't that mean they lost to me? Given his personality, there's no way he will let that slide. Before Ronan could slip away, a cold voice called out from behind him. "So you're the one who took 1st place in the practical exam." The person who had arrived was none other than Shuri Pan, the future Sword Saint and one of the Empire's rising stars. Ronan immediately panicked and insisted he had the wrong person. This reaction stemmed from Shuri Pan's extremely competitive nature. He could never tolerate anyone being better than him with a sword. Upon hearing that, Shuri Pan's brow furrowed sharply. "Why are you lying?" Ronan simply spread his hands, completely refusing to concede. Just because you say I'm first doesn't make it true. If we're being serious, then show me proof. Shuripan let out a cold laugh. Then I'll prove it to you. As he spoke, the longsword in his hand shot forward with a piercing whistle through the air, aimed directly at Ronan's face. However, Ronan effortlessly blocked it. That's the proof. If you weren't in first place, there's no way you could have reacted in time. Now let me see just how strong you really are. Ronan felt a surge of annoyance. He couldn't believe this lunatic hadn't changed at all. In the very next second, he leaped backward suddenly. Simultaneously, with a twist of his wrist, 3 condensed waves of sword aura sliced directly toward Shuripan. Even though Shuripan successfully deflected all 3 incoming strikes, the sheer power behind them caused his fingers to tremble uncontrollably. That's my strength. Are you satisfied now? Ronan had hoped this would finally be the end of it, but to his surprise, Shuripan charged at him once more, sword in hand. I admit your swordsmanship is excellent, he said, but it still hasn't reached the point of surpassing mine. Show me all the strength you've been hiding. What you've revealed so far still isn't enough to convince me. As Ronan noticed the increasingly fierce look in Shuripan's eyes, he felt a headache beginning to form. This was precisely why he had always avoided running into someone like him. If this continued, Shuripan might even harness her aura, and given Ronan's current condition, he knew he couldn't withstand that. With that thought in mind, Ronan turned and ran without the slightest hesitation. The broad-shouldered Shuripan flew into a rage. What are you doing? In a fight, how can you turn your back on your enemy? But Ronan completely ignored him and ran straight past Asher. He cleanly and shamelessly pulled Asher in as a human shield. Witnessing this, even Shuripan hesitated to attack recklessly. You despicable coward, using a woman as a shield? You don't deserve to be called a knight. Ronan responded with a sly grin. You really haven't changed. Even if it kills you, you'll still cling to that so-called knightly code. As soon as he finished speaking, Ronan clenched his fist and drove it straight into Shuripan's nose. He then added, and here's one more secret. Asher's a guy. The brutal punch caused Shuripan's vision to go black in an instant. However, he quickly regained his strength and was ready to face the world once more. Ronan had already pulled Asher so far away that they were long gone. Just then, Fillion's guard squad rushed over. The bald guard captain froze as soon as he spotted the injured Shuripan. War Shuripan, we heard you got into a fight. Please describe the other person, and our guard unit will issue a wanted notice immediately. Upon hearing this, Shuripan brushed the dust off himself and replied, You don't need to speak to me so respectfully. Right now, I'm not a duke's son, I'm just a Fillion applicant. You don't need to interfere. It was simply a fair fight. I'll take care of it myself. But then, Shuripan's eyes suddenly sharpened. A crack had appeared in the sword he held, a blade forged from the finest mithril. He already knew Ronan was impressive, but he never expected him to accomplish something like this with such an ordinary weapon. Shuripan suddenly smiled in relief, his eyes ablaze with the thrill and obsession of finally finding a worthy rival. Ronan, I'll remember that name. Early the next morning, in a forest near the imperial capital, Ronan stared down at the map in his hands, meticulously checking the route. Meanwhile, Asher appeared distracted throughout the entire time. Ronan, are we really okay with doing this? I heard the guy you fought yesterday is the heir of the Grancia family, one of the great houses, second only to the royal family. Ronan dismissed the concern, assuring Asher that he was worrying for nothing. Shuripan was simply obsessed with swordsmanship. In reality, he was quite a decent person, guided by his own faith and principles. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to call him the perfect model of nobility. If he truly wanted to cause trouble, they would already be facing a prison breakfast by now. After a long trek, Ronan finally found the location Professor Baron had described, a river called Panaralvasim. What people referred to as a magic ley line was the magic flowing through the world. For some reason, it gathered into one location, forming a lake-like concentration of magical energy. The magic leaking from just one part of it was enough to transform nearby ordinary stones into high-grade mana stones, while even common weeds could turn into priceless miracle herbs. This was precisely why its value was immeasurable, and why so many sought to claim such a place for themselves. Even Ronan was taken aback. He had not anticipated that Professor Baron would entrust them with a location of such immense worth. At the side, Asher sensed the magical power flowing through the air, and his eyes widened in shock. It was the first time in his life that he had ever felt such overwhelming magic. He was convinced that if he cast a spell in this location, he could easily harness high-tier magic that he normally could never achieve. Even more astonishing, the egg Ophi had left with Ronan was now glowing brilliantly, absorbing magic at an alarming rate. Then Asher seemed to have a realization. Ronan, doesn't this feel strange? According to Professor Barron, a place this rich in magic should attract a large number of fantasy species and ordinary animals. But from the moment we arrived until now, we haven't heard a single sound from any animals. Asher's words struck Ronan like a bucket of ice water, instantly jolting him awake. He shot his feet and took a deep breath. In the next moment, Ronan caught a faint trace of blood in the air. He rubbed his brow, sounding utterly helpless. Why does trouble follow me everywhere I go? Asher, find somewhere to hide first. I smell blood. Sure enough, in the next instant, 5 arrows glowing with magical light shot out from deep within the forest. Just as the arrows were about to strike, Ronan's gaze turned icy. With a swift motion of his blade, Ronan effortlessly sliced all 5 arrows in half. As he examined the style of the arrows, a sudden memory sparked in his mind. Back then, one of the members of his old squad had hailed from Kabru. Ronan had learned a great deal about Kabru from him. These specially made arrows could only be used by Hound, class members who had successfully poached more than 100 times. Meanwhile, the poachers who witnessed the scene were left stunned. What just happened? He cut down every arrow with a single strike. Before they could decide on a plan, Ronan was already charging toward them at high speed. The purple-haired man at the front snapped back to his senses and quickly lowered his voice, instructing the others to spread out and attack from various angles. Ronan's heart sank at the sight of the Hound-class hunters. They were nothing like the 2 small fry he had encountered before. At least these poachers knew to pin down their target first. In the next moment, Ronan abruptly stopped and shouted, "Don't attack, I'm on your side." His words instantly made the poachers hesitate. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" Noticing their growing doubts, Ronan continued, "I'm Ahayat, the youngest hound in the Damas branch." Upon hearing that, the group cautiously regrouped. The purple-haired leader remained suspicious. "A brat like you, still wet behind the ears, thinks you're on the same level as me?" Ronan responded with a provocative grin, his tone dripping with disdain. "Just because you can't do it doesn't mean nobody else can. If you don't believe me, just ask your branch's wild wolf." That instantly made the purple-haired man snap in humiliation. He grabbed Ronan by the collar and said, "You got a death wish, kid." Seeing the commotion, the others rushed to intervene. "Calm down," one of them urged. "This guy really does have insider knowledge. We should consult the captain first. If this is legitimate, starting a conflict with another branch could lead to serious trouble." Their argument caught the attention of the captain, who was nearby. "Wasn't I told to keep watch quietly? Why are you making such a racket?" The pressure radiating from the wild wolf was enough to make everyone freeze in place. The purple-haired man rushed over to the bald man and provided a detailed account of everything that had just occurred. After hearing this, the bald man's expression darkened immediately. "By our rules, this is the territory of the Demiure branch." "What are you doing here?" Ronan suddenly burst into laughter. "Sorry about that. I wouldn't really know, seeing as I'm not actually a Haiute." Before the words had fully left his mouth, Ronan's sword flashed from its sheath once more. The 4 poachers surrounding him fell dead instantly. The bald man's face changed drastically as he quickly reached for the sword at his waist. However, Ronan gave him no time to react and lunged forward in a single, swift step. Another flash of cold steel sliced through the air, and the bald man's head fell cleanly from his body. Ronan then pulled out a sheet of paper and tossed it in front of the purple-haired man. "If you want to survive, mark every branch location you know on this map." In no time, the purple-haired man handed Ronan a completed map. Trembling all over, he said, "You promised you'd spare me. You're going to keep your word, right?" Ronan remained silent at first, then responded through his actions. "Of course not. I often say one thing and do another." Just as Ronan was about to turn around and head back, the egg in his bag suddenly began to shake violently. Before Ronan could untie the bag and examine its contents, Asher suddenly went pale and pointed into the distance with a shaking hand. The dark red blood beside the corpses of the creatures Caribou had slaughtered suddenly lifted off the ground, rising into the air all at once. In the next instant, the scattered blood coalesced into a raging wave that surged straight toward the 2 of them. Ronan tightened his grip on his sword and assumed a combat stance. However, the egg at his waist burst from the bag on its own and shot directly into the center of the blood wave, eagerly absorbing its energy. The bizarre sight filled Ronan with questions, but one thing was certain. Whatever was about to hatch from that egg was no ordinary creature. Once the blood wave had been completely drained away, cracks began to spread rapidly across the eggshell. Ronan could no longer contain his excitement. As he leaned in closer, a sudden force struck him directly in the nose. When he regained his senses, he discovered a peculiar little creature with jet-black fur standing before him. The two of them stared in total surprise at the oddly shaped little object, unable to help but wonder. Where had this little monster absorbed its energy from in a turnout like this? Ronan cautiously extended his hand, and the little creature gently rubbed its head against his fingertip. However, recalling how his handsome face had just taken a hit, Ronan muttered in feigned annoyance. "You may be cute, but your way of greeting people is a bit too extreme. We start with a headbutt." As soon as he finished speaking, a magic circle suddenly appeared above the little creature's head. Under the glow of the spell, the swelling on Ronan's face vanished instantly. Stunned and delighted, he had not expected the little creature to possess healing magic. Just as he was about to name the cedar, the little creature's expression suddenly sharpened, and it darted off in one direction. Seeing that, Ronan couldn't help but look surprised. He had not expected something so newly born to already possess such sharp senses. Cedar was chasing none other than Barlas, the last surviving member of Kari Brew. Barlas had only stepped away to relieve himself, and upon returning, he discovered that all of his teammates had been wiped out. After hiding behind a tree and witnessing the entire hatching process, he panicked and ran for his life. Cedar immediately pounced and began to suck the blood from his wound. That terrified Barlas so much that he immediately began begging for mercy. Fortunately, Ronan arrived just in time to stop Cedar, but Ronan had no intention of attacking Barlas. Instead, he asked with an oddly concerned tone, "Barlas, you're not hurt too badly, are you?" Barlas jerked his head up, his face filled with fear. "Thanks to you, I'm still alive, but how do you know my name?" Before he could finish, Ronan had already pressed his sword against Barlas's throat. "You don't need to know the details. All that matters is that I'm glad to see you again." It turned out that Barlas was the very man who had left Kari Brew to join Ronan's squad in his previous life. A smile tugged at Ronan's lips. "My talkative friend from Kari Brew, I need a favor from you. But just to be clear, I'm not asking." Upon hearing this, Barlas immediately broke down in tears, promising that as long as Ronan spared his life, he would do absolutely anything. After calming Barlas, Ronan took Asher back to the magical ley vein. Professor Barron noted that the spring water from the ley vein was highly valuable. Ronan filled the bottle and intended to discover its value. To Ronan's surprise, Maria's father was willing to buy it for 20 gold coins per bottle, filling him with silent delight. At that rate, he could nearly achieve financial freedom simply by selling the water. Asher couldn't resist being nosy and asked Ronan what he planned to do with all that money. After all, Ronan had secured second place, which meant a full tuition exemption and a generous scholarship each year. Ronan paused to think. The entrance ceremony is just a few days away, and he wants to bring his sister into the city. Before long, Ronan's sister Ilar arrived in town. The very first thing she did upon seeing Ronan was anxiously ask if he had done anything illegal. The carriage Ronan sent to pick her up was simply too luxurious. Ronan simply smiled and reassured her not to worry. He dragged her through one upscale clothing shop after another, purchasing everything in sight. As Ilar glanced at the extravagant garments, she appeared uneasy. "I know you've made some money lately, but buying me gifts this expensive is a bit much, don't you think?" Ronan, however, did not think much of it. His sister had endured a lot for his sake in the past, and now it was finally her turn to enjoy life a little. His sister's eyes filled with tears. That little brat from back then had truly grown up. She excitedly ran toward the door, waving her arms. "Everyone, come look! Look at what a wonderful boy my little brother is!" After practically buying out the whole store, Ronan planned to take his sister out for a huge meal. The moment Ronan pushed the door open, he froze. Shuri Pan stood right outside, asking why he had taken so long. Ronan nearly jumped out of his skin. "What are you doing here? Please don't tell me you're some kind of stalker." Shuri Pan explained that he was only there to pick up his new fittings. Since he happened to run into Ronan on the way, he decided to wait for him there. Ronan stood there, speechless. "That's still stalking. Don't push me into beating you up on the happiest day I've had in a while." Shuri Pan refused to back down, gripping the hilt of his sword. "That works for me." Just as the tension between them was about to explode, Ilar suddenly stepped in front of Ronan. "Ronan, haven't I told you before that you need to speak politely?" A cold sweat nearly broke out on Ronan's back. "Sis, you got it wrong. The bastard behind you started it." But Ilar maintained a stern expression and wagged a finger at him. "So your wings have grown in now. You make a mistake and still dare to talk back." After scolding Ronan, Ilar lifted her hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He then turned to Shuri Pan and said, "I'm truly sorry. My little brother can be rough around the edges, but he's actually very kind. It's my fault for not disciplining him properly, so please forgive him." Shuri Pan instantly panicked, a flush rising across his face before he could stop it. The heart that had once beaten solely for the sword lost its rhythm for the first time, overwhelmed by a woman whose presence thundered in his chest. Then, Shuripan stammered that Iller had done nothing wrong and that he was the one who had been too reckless. Delighted, Iller took Shuripan's hand. "I can't believe how generous you are. I'm so grateful that Ronin has a friend like you." That sudden gesture caused Shuripan's already flustered mind to short-circuit completely, making even breathing feel difficult. In a panic, he pulled out a pure gold identity token. "I'm really sorry for interrupting your time together as siblings. This is my family's identity token. It works everywhere across the Empire, so please accept it as my apology. Last time, even my own sword was damaged, so Ronin's must have suffered as well." To purchase swords, head to the Great Forge located at the far west end of Workshop Street. With a history spanning 500 years, this place is not open to the general public. However, with this token, you will have free access. After saying that, Shuripan fled in embarrassment. Meanwhile, Ronin stood there, questioning his entire life, unable to utter a single word. That token alone was valuable enough to buy a small city. Was this truly the same Shuripan he once knew? Shortly after, the entrance ceremony officially commenced. Headmaster Kratet stepped onto the stage. In a ringing voice, he declared, "Welcome, geniuses of the 791st class. The entrance ceremony now begins." What followed was an incredibly long speech that had Ronin struggling to stifle his yawns. At that moment, the headmaster snapped his fingers. The skies suddenly split open, revealing a pale violet expanse beyond. In a flash of blinding light, everyone was suddenly teleported to an arena. Before the crowd could fully process what had just occurred, the headmaster announced, "Now we move to the final part of the assembly, the upperclassmen meeting match." This so-called meeting match was a unique event exclusive to Philion Academy. The first and second place students from the first year. Ronin could choose any one of the top 4 second-year students for a one-on-one combat spar. Although new students had the right to refuse, Ronin had no intention of backing down. He wanted to seize this opportunity to impress his sister. He had already gained the strength to protect himself in the world and would no longer be bullied. With that in mind, Ronin looked toward the headmaster and expressed his desire to challenge all 4 seniors at the same time. The moment those words were spoken, every teacher below the stage was left in shock. The seniors' eyes were filled with shock and anger. The headmaster quickly turned to Nyberger at his side and asked if she agreed with Ronin's request. Nyberger strongly supported it, saying, "Do exactly as he says. After all, the greatest principle of Philion is that strength comes first. If things get out of hand, I'll step in immediately." After considering the pros and cons, the headmaster ultimately agreed to Ronin's request. Up in the stands, Ronin's sister appeared deeply worried. He advised him that if anything felt off, he should quit right away. In response, Ronin simply smiled and waved at her, reassuring her not to worry. At the headmaster's signal, Nesta was the first to act, transforming into a blur as he charged ahead. Ronin crouched low, narrowly evading the strike. A look of surprise crossed his face. This guy was actually several times faster than Maria when she used her magic combat technique. Before he could think any further, Karen's spears lunged toward his vitals like a venomous snake. With no time to dodge, Ronin quickly raised his sword to block the incoming strike. However, the force of the blow was so powerful that it sent him sliding back several meters. Before he could fully regain his footing, Brahm had already hoisted a giant sword as tall as a man behind him. "Ronin, why would you choose something like this? I wanted to confront you fairly, face to face." As he spoke, he swung the sword down with all his strength. The other 3 had already readied their follow-up attacks as well. The relentless chain of assault made Ronin inwardly admire them. Each of them was highly skilled on their own, and their teamwork was exceptional too. In the next instant, Ronin's figure disappeared from the sight of all 4. Their attacks all missed their target, striking only empty air. Before they could recover from their shock, Ronin rushed in at blinding speed. His body moved like a ghost among them, weaving through their positions and delivering a heavy strike to each. Realizing he was the last one standing, Brahm felt a surge of excitement and charged forward with his massive sword. At the precise moment Ronin swung his blade, Brahm had the unsettling feeling that he was seeing Professor Nyberger standing before him. By the time he came to his senses, the giant sword in his hands had already been shattered by Ronin. The entire arena fell silent at first, but then erupted into cheers so loud they seemed to shake the sky. No one had anticipated that a freshman could actually defeat all 4 of the top second-year students on his own. Meanwhile, the 4 defeated upperclassmen stood frozen in place, questioning their entire lives. Ronin paid them no mind and focused solely on his sister in the audience. She gripped the arm of a nearby spectator, shouting excitedly, "Did you see that? That's my little brother!" After a moment of contemplation, Ronan approached the four seniors who remained standing in disbelief and offered them a deep 90-degree bow. Thank you for your hard work, seniors. All four of you were far stronger than I had imagined. Because of you, I learned a great deal during this exchange. I'm truly grateful that you accepted the challenge of working with such an immature underclassman. I hope you can forgive the disrespect I showed today, and I ask for your guidance in the future as well. Meanwhile, Maria and Asher were left staring in complete disbelief, wondering if Ronan had somehow taken the wrong medicine. Even the seniors exchanged glances, unsure of what to say. Ram, who had just been overwhelmed with despair moments earlier, suddenly jumped up. I can't believe it. This underclassman is not only incredibly strong, but also so polite. He raised Ronan's hand high in the air. You don't need to be so modest. You beat us fair and square with your own strength, so don't worry. That's exactly what Philion stands for. Ronan offered a sheepish grin. He had just demonstrated not only his ability to protect himself, but also his skill in handling people with tact. His sister could finally stop worrying about him all the time. In the stands, his sister was already in tears, overwhelmed by how much Ronan had truly grown. Meanwhile, in one corner of the audience, a purple-haired woman watched Ronan in silence, a meaningful smile curving her lips. What an interesting guy. That night, the banquet hall of Philion Academy blazed with light, and Asher stared in awe at the luxurious scene before him, so stunned that he could barely close his mouth. Maria, however, was completely unfazed, and was already stuffing a glistening roast leg of lamb into her mouth. When the late-arriving Ronan finally showed up, Asher asked if he had already sent his sister off. Ronan nodded. Before leaving, she kept reminding me of one thing after another, so I spent a little extra time trying to reassure her. I also sent Sita along to ensure her protection. Then Ronan picked up a drumstick, eager to finally dig in. At that very moment, Shuripan suddenly appeared behind him like a specter. Can you truly enjoy your meal in peace right now? Ronan nearly turned pale from fright. You just won't go away, will you? What exactly do you want? Shuripan calmly pulled a small notebook from his chest, his expression entirely serious. I'm only here to confirm something important. Where is Miss Iller's hometown? What are the roads like on the way back? Is the local security reliable? Are bandits common there? Ronan was left completely dumbfounded. This was the important matter he had been discussing. Shuripan's expression immediately turned serious. Of course it's important. I assume you've assigned guards to protect her personally, or at the very least, hired a mercenary group. Otherwise, you're no better than the criminals of Radlan. Ronan erupted with anger. I had sent someone even more dependable than a mercenary group. As long as a dragon doesn't unexpectedly drop from the sky, my sister will be perfectly safe, so stop meddling in this. However, Shuripan suddenly froze, a fine sheen of cold sweat forming at his temples. If a dragon really did show up, that would put Miss Iller in danger. Ronan felt as if his head might split open. You're being a lunatic. Why do you care so much about my sister's affairs? She's my sister. What does she have to do with you? That question left Shuripan instantly speechless, stammering and unable to utter a single word. Just as the atmosphere became painfully awkward, a voice with a hint of laughter broke through. What an amusing scene it was, to think the wild wolf of House Granzia could be so subdued. Shuripan turned around, and disgust instantly appeared on his face. What do you want now? The newcomer was none other than Alberbed, this year's top student in the Magic Division. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here for you. At this moment, the only person I'm focused on is Ronan. Upon hearing that, Shuripan visibly relaxed. So, Ronan was the one who had stirred up her twisted curiosity. Anyway, I've already said what I needed to say, so do whatever you want, he stated before turning to leave. However, after taking only a few steps, Shuripan called out to him again. Ronan, I still think it would be safer to send my family's guards. At her words, veins bulged on Ronan's forehead. I'm begging you, just get lost already. After Shuripan finally departed, Alberbed took out a purple brooch and handed it to Ronan. I came here to present a proposal to you. The moment Ronan saw the brooch in his hand, his pupils contracted sharply. In his past life, General Adeshin had once gifted him an identical brooch. It is important to remember that House Akruja and Shuripan's House Granzia were regarded as the Empire's two great pillars. Unlike other nobles who prioritize bloodlines above all else, House Akruja had always upheld a family creed that placed talent first. They provided opportunities to exceptional talents, and the symbol of that opportunity is the brooch now resting in Ronan's hand. I trust you understand its significance. I hope you will make the wise choice. After all, if a bee remains among a flock of sheep for too long, it will inevitably start to behave like one. The first day of enrollment arrived quickly. This academy, with a creed that prioritized strength above all else, revealed class differences from the very moment student housing was assigned. Students in the middle ranks enjoyed living in apartments that featured private single rooms and complimentary buffet dining, making dorm life exceptionally comfortable. Meanwhile, the bottom 30% were crammed into a crooked wooden shack in the far corner of the academy grounds. This group even included a few pampered sons of noble families, who typically raised hell about their situation on the first day. The teachers patiently explained that the only way out was to study hard. Otherwise, they would find themselves repeating the same semester. The top 10%, including Ronan, were each assigned an entire villa, a place that could only be described as dazzlingly luxurious. Even Ronan found himself taking a sharp breath at the sheer extravagance. As he toured the rooms, a document on the desk caught his attention. It was Fillion's course registration form, allowing students the freedom to choose their desired fields of study. The tip of his pen raced swiftly across the page. Ronan smiled at the completed form, having signed up for nearly 2/3 of all available classes. As he finished, he couldn't help but curl his lips upward, eagerly anticipating how full and rewarding his future academy life would be. That dream shattered the very next day. On the basic swordsmanship training grounds, the instructor stared at him with a stern expression. "Student Ronan, you won't need to attend this class anymore." Ronan froze, surprised. "But teacher, class has barely even started." The instructor suddenly burst into laughter. "That's exactly what I was about to say. In this short amount of time, you've already mastered every form of imperial swordsmanship and can execute them flawlessly. If I let you stay here, the other students will start questioning their entire existence." With that, the teacher handed him his first course completion certificate. After that, whether it was swordsmanship practice or magical beast hunting, nearly every class concluded in the same manner. Ronan finished them all early. With nothing left to do, Ronan sat by a small river on campus and began to contemplate life. Who knew how much time had passed before Nyberger suddenly appeared next to him. "Shouldn't you be in class at this hour? What are you doing sitting here?" Before Ronan could respond, she let out a light laugh. "Actually, I think I already know. You've probably finished all your classes, haven't you?" Ronan sighed and replied, "I thought Fillion would be a lot more impressive than this. It's nowhere near what I imagined." Nyberger did not refute him. After all, this boy had only witnessed her secret swordsmanship once, and had already managed to replicate 70 to 80% of its essence. His talent was truly remarkable. Then, Nyberger unsheathed the sword at her side. As one of Fillion's professors, she was not particularly pleased to hear that. While speaking, she gestured for Ronan to hand over the sword he was holding. "Now, let me teach you a proper lesson." Just as Ronan remained confused, a sword aura infused with magic flashed past the side of his ear. In the next moment, the lake behind him erupted, sending a wall of water dozens of meters high into the sky. But Nyberger only sighed. As expected, with a piece of scrap metal like that, this was about all it could do. Something that can't even channel magic properly doesn't deserve to be called a weapon. All it does is hold its wielder back. With that, Nyberger slowly unsheathed her sword. With the same casual swing as before, she split the entire lake in two. The power was dozens of times greater than her last attack. Ronan stared in disbelief. The posture was unchanged. The force was unchanged. The force was identical. So why was the difference so overwhelming? It always believed that a weapon was merely a consumable tool. As she watched him standing there, utterly stunned, Nyberger curled her lips into a satisfied smile. "You may not seem like someone who can wield magic just yet, but I believe you'll master it one day. Even if it's just for the moment you begin to weave magic into your sword techniques, you need a weapon that truly fits you." After a moment of reflection, Nyberger instructed Ronan to begin attending her class from that point forward. Ronan instantly looked up. "Your class? Isn't it only open to second years and above?" "That may be true," came the reply, "but I'll apply for a special exception. However, there's one condition if you want to attend. You need to find yourself a proper weapon first." Ronan, along with Asher and the others, headed straight for the forge that Shuri Pan had mentioned, but they were taken aback by the run-down little shack in front of them. None of them could believe this was truly the forge house that Granzier frequented. When Ronan and the others pushed the door open, they found the interior completely empty. Just as the three of them were puzzled, a giant furry hand suddenly pushed open a door deeper inside. In the next moment, a werewolf, towering over 2.5 meters, stood before them, glaring viciously and demanding to know what they wanted. Ronan quickly produced House Grancia's token and explained that he had come to purchase a weapon. The werewolf let out an unconcerned yawn and said, "We don't do business with brats here. You can get lost." Suddenly, his gaze locked onto Asher. I happen to be hungry right now. If you're willing to give me one of this guy's arms, I might consider serving you." That scared Asher half to death, and he quickly blurted out that he was filthy and definitely not tasty. Ronan's eyes immediately grew cold. His right hand drew the sword free, and the tip lunged straight toward the werewolf's stomach. Although the werewolf flinched in pain, there was not a single wound on his body. In the next moment, a transparent armor, glowing with a faint blue light, slowly materialized around him. Ronan tightened his grip on the sword once more. The werewolf's expression shifted instantly. Wait, this is all a misunderstanding. It's just the rule of our forge. First-time customers have to pass a strength test. I also want to see how effective this transparent armor of mine really is, so I deliberately provoked you." The explanation sounded ridiculous, yet Ronan sensed the man was telling the truth, so he slowly sheathed his sword. "My advice is to save that routine for midday next time instead." The werewolf dropped his earlier arrogance and turned to Asher with a grin. "Sorry about that. I probably scared you. But don't worry, I don't eat people. My name is Ditoway, and I'm the gatekeeper of this forge. This area is just the entrance. Now, let me take you to the real workshop." Then Ditoway guided the group deeper inside. He pressed firmly on a button concealed in the crack between the bricks. With a sharp click, the sound of turning gears began to rumble up from underground. The stone floor beneath their feet suddenly began to shake violently. In the next moment, the ground beneath them sank rapidly, pulling them downward. None of them had anticipated that an entire underground city lay hidden below. This was none other than Perugia, the largest and finest forge in the imperial capital. Ditoway thumped his chest and declared, "Since you passed my test, Ronan, I'm naturally going to fulfill my duty and show you something worthwhile. Not this underground city. What I'm really taking you to see is the greatest master smith in the Empire." It didn't take long for Ditoway to lead Ronan and the others to the deepest forge within the underground city. The old man hammering metal inside was a legendary craftsman, boasting 400 years of forging experience. Hearing the commotion caused by Ditoway, Dullen paused his hammering. "I didn't expect you to bring in 3 people at once. That must mean one of them has enough skill to deserve being here, right?" Ditoway immediately straightened his back proudly. Pointing at Ronan behind him, he said, "Of course, this kid's strength will absolutely blow your mind." However, seeing how young and immature Ronan still appeared, Dullen clearly did not believe him. Talk is cheap. Forging a sword requires a match between the weapon and its wielder. So, why not let him demonstrate what he can truly do? Ronan felt a bit confused. He drew the black iron sword at his waist without uttering a word. The moment Dullen laid eyes on that sword, his expression soured. "You call that scrap metal a weapon?" Before Ronan could respond, Dullen abruptly grabbed the black iron sword from his hand. He raised his hammer and brought it down in a single, crushing strike, splitting the sword cleanly in two. "Don't tell me you've really been carrying this garbage around and calling it a weapon." Ronan's expression darkened immediately. That was the most reliable blade he had managed to select from hundreds of swords. "Old man, do you even know what you're doing?" Dullen, however, casually gestured toward the swords in the shop. "Take your pick. Consider it a gift. Any blade in here is guaranteed to be hundreds of times better than that piece of junk you were using." Hearing that, Ronan froze for a moment and turned to look at Ditoway. Seeing him nod, Ronan chose not to hold back and picked a mithril sword that glinted with a cold sheen from the pile of weapons. The moment it landed in his hand, he sensed that something about it was different. Yet, he still had doubts. Could the gap truly be this vast? Ronan glanced back at Dullen, hesitation creeping into his voice. "You need to promise me first. No matter how much damage I cause, I won't be paying for it." Dullen waved him off. "Go ahead and use your strongest sword art. I won't make you pay for any destruction you cause." With that assurance, Ronan lightly gripped the hilt of the mithril sword, recalling the sword technique Professor Nibber had demonstrated the day before. Dullen's pupils immediately contracted as he sensed the sword intent surrounding Ronan, which somehow carried a faint trace of Nibberger. In the next moment, the sword's light came crashing down. With a deafening explosion, the walls of the forge were blown apart, creating a trench over 100 meters long that split open across the ground. Both Ronan and Dullen stood frozen, completely dumbfounded. The earlier contempt had vanished from Dullen's voice. "I said you wouldn't have to pay, so don't worry. But I do have one question. Are you Nibberger's disciple?" Ronan jolted. "You know Professor Nibberger as well." Dullen nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Of course I do. The flying sword Rusha carries was forged under my hammer. It's one of the rare masterpieces from my 400 years of blacksmithing." As he spoke, he suddenly erupted in laughter. He reached out and lightly patted Ronan on the shoulder. I never would have imagined someone could unleash a slash this powerful without magical reinforcement. I haven't seen a swordsmanship prodigy like you in nearly a century. However, Dylan's expression darkened once more. That said, your strength also presents a challenge. Crafting a sword that truly suits you won't be easy. Even a mithril sword, renowned for its hardness, cannot endure your abuse. Ordinary materials will not withstand your power. We will need the finest refined steel, combined with something extraordinary. The moment he finished speaking, Ronan's eyes lit up with excitement. He quickly rummaged through his clothes, then pulled out a piece of Sita's eggshell and held it out. This comes from a dream bird's egg. It's the hardest substance I've ever encountered. Perhaps it could be used as a material. The moment Dylan picked up the eggshell, he began to hammer it. However, after just a few strikes, he was left stunned. Even the hammer in his hand, made of mithril, failed to leave the slightest mark on the shell. Dylan's eyes lit up immediately. Clutching the shell, he looked at Ronan with urgency. I never imagined material like this could exist in the world. Are you really willing to let me forge with it? The moment Ronan gave him a firm yes, Dylan became positively radiant and slapped his chest in assurance. Come back in 2 weeks. I'll forge you the best sword in the entire imperial capital. Ronan smiled with satisfaction as he prepared to leave with Maria and Asher. Unexpectedly, Dylan called after them saying, and you, who came in with the honored guest, since you're already here, you can't leave empty-handed. Go find the other smiths and have them forge weapons for you. Just mention that I sent you and they won't treat you poorly. As he spoke, Dylan resumed, swinging his hammer. I would love to guide you there myself, but right now, all I can think about is refining this material. I can't focus on anything else. Amid the constant clang of hammering, Dylan's face grew increasingly red. The sound of hammering this material was simply too exciting. Please excuse the sight. The three of them stared blankly, recalling how Dittoe had warned them on the way over that Dylan had a rather strange personality and advised them not to take it the wrong way. After that, Ronan led Maria and Asher in search of another decent smith. Zwanweka did not hesitate at all and chose the highest grade materials available, while Ronan felt no pain at all regarding the cost. After all, thanks to the Granzia family token that Shuripan had given them, every expense here was being covered by House Granzia. During the 2 weeks of waiting, with little else to occupy his time, Ronan could only wander around Filion. By sheer accident, he found himself at Professor Nibberger's advanced teaching grounds. As Ronan gazed at the imposing teaching building before him, he couldn't help but mutter inwardly. Nibberger had instructed him to attend her class only after he had found a truly suitable weapon. Now that he had obtained one from Dylan, it should finally meet her standards. Before he could gather his thoughts, Nibberger had somehow appeared right beside him. Before Ronan could say a word, she reached out and grabbed him by the ear. Long time no see, Ronan. I'm pretty sure I told you to come to my class the moment you found a proper weapon. So why are you only showing up now? Ronan was ready to explain, but Nibber dragged him toward the classroom instead. Save the excuses for the walk. Come with me first. Before long, Ronan was taken directly into the training hall. Folding her arms, Nidberger addressed the students in front of her. This kid made enough noise at the upperclassmen meeting that I'm sure all of you already know who he is, so I won't bother with any further introduction. Starting today, he will be joining this class with all of you. The moment she spoke those words, the entire place erupted. While there were certainly some mocking voices in the crowd, Ronan chose to ignore them. As he scanned the crowd, he recognized several familiar faces. Not only were Brahm and Nestu, whom he had fought during the upperclassmen meeting, present, but even his old rival Shuri Pan was among them. At that moment, someone hurried over. She hurried over to Nibberger, breathing heavily, and quietly explained the reason for her tardiness. Nibberger didn't scold her. Instead, she introduced her to Ronan. Upon hearing that, the girl immediately smiled gently and said, "It's nice to meet you." She was the teaching assistant for this course, Adeshin, who is a second-year student in the Martial Division. Ronan froze in place. He could never have imagined that the woman who would one day become the first female Grand General in history, renowned for her extraordinary command ability, the so-called Iron Lady, Adeshin, had once appeared to be a warm and caring older sister type before she joined the military. However, that shock was soon replaced by confusion. Adeshan moved back and forth among the students. Was this so-called teaching assistant merely a babysitter? Could anyone simply order her around as they pleased? At that moment, a male student approached Ronan. There was a probing edge in his tone. "Hey, Ronan. I'm Owen, a third year. I've heard a lot about your performance at the upperclassmen meeting, and I was hoping to learn a thing or two from you. How about a spar?" Ronan's attention was completely focused on Adeshin at that moment, leaving him with no interest in sparring. Owen, however, would not let it go. he suddenly turned and shouted, "Adeshin! Hey, idiot over there! Go get my practice spear!" Hearing that, Adeshin quickly nodded and replied, "Okay, I'll bring it right away." However, when she returned, running with a long spear in hand, Owen deliberately picked a fight. "I switched to a short spear ages ago. Why are you still bringing me a long spear, idiot?" Adeshin quietly tried to explain. "Sorry, Owen. Last class, you were still using the long spear." Before she could finish, Owen swung the spear and struck her hard on the head. "You're a teaching assistant, and you can't even remember something this basic. What kind of joke is that? You weren't even qualified to attend these lessons initially. You only received this opportunity because you pleaded with instructor Nibberger, and now you can't even manage something so minor." Before Owen could finish, Ronan had already seized the spear, his expression dark. "I accept your sparring request. Come and fight me, you ill-mannered fool." In Ronan's heart, Grand General Adeshin was, next to his sister, the most important person in his life. He respected her more than anyone else, and he would never allow scum like this to humiliate her. Seeing that, Owen curled his lips into a smirk. "Weren't you the one who didn't want to spar just a moment ago? Don't tell me you're standing up for this idiot, or is there some kind of secret relationship between the two of you?" Before he could finish, Ronan drove his sword forcefully into Owen's spear. The impact sent Owen flying back dozens of meters. Once he regained his balance, disbelief was etched across his face. This opponent hadn't even used magic, so how could the force of that attack be so terrifying? Ronan stared at him with icy eyes. "You kept going on and on about using a short spear, so I helped you switch. Now, can we duel properly?" Upon hearing that, Owen glanced down and noticed that the spear in his hands had snapped cleanly in two. The humiliation he had endured surged through him, igniting a wave of rage. Clutching the broken spear tip, he charged at Ronan with wild intensity. As the attack rushed toward him, Ronan hesitated before dodging. He suddenly moved only when the spear tip was just 0.01 centimeters away from him. With a casual swing, he sent Owen reeling backward. Immediately after, Ronan struck Owen hard across the face with the wooden sword. The force caused Owen's vision to fade, and he nearly blacked out. Yet Ronan remained unsatisfied. He charged forward once more and struck him with a black mamba claw attack. After taking the entire combo, Owen collapsed to the ground and began twitching. Once it was over, Ronan lifted the wooden sword and pointed it at the few students who had been ordering Adeshin around earlier. "Now it's your turn," he said. "You all run to bother someone else over every little thing. Is the teaching assistant your personal servant, or do you just enjoy bullying people? Then come and bully me instead. I'm very easy to pick on." Seeing this, Adeshin hurried forward and positioned herself in front of Ronan. "Stop it, Ronan. I don't understand why you're making such a fuss over me, but I'm really fine. So please, just calm down." But Ronan had no intention of stopping. "I can't stand watching those idiots treat you like this. At least in this empire, no one gets to humiliate you." As he spoke, he gently pushed Adeshin aside. "If I don't teach this whole pack a lesson today, I'm not stopping." At that moment, Nibberger's commanding voice echoed through the air. "This farce ends now." The moment her words echoed through the air, a terrifying pressure enveloped the entire space. Ronan froze in place, not from a lack of desire to move, but because his body refused to obey him. It felt as if a giant serpent lurking in the shadows had fixated on him, making even the act of breathing painfully difficult. Just moments ago, they had been sparring, so I won't delve into what happened to Owen. On a real battlefield, he could face far worse consequences. However, if you intend to escalate this any further, then as your teacher, I can no longer stand by. Ronan gritted his teeth, deeply dissatisfied with Nibberger's inaction. She had clearly known that the teaching assistant was being bullied, yet she chose to stand aside and do nothing. Nibberger offered no explanation, only hardening her tone as she said, "This is a matter between me and my teaching assistant. It is not your place to interfere. I'll warn you one last time. Are you going to stop or not?" At those words, Ronan's eyes suddenly sharpened. He summoned every ounce of strength within him, striving to break free from Nibberger's oppressive aura. Ultimately, he achieved success. Slowly, he raised the wooden sword and pointed it at Nibberger. "Ask me as many times as you want. My answer won't change. Until I've accomplished what I set out to do, I will not stop." Nibberger let out a helpless sigh. "I'll have to do this the hard way." As she softly uttered the words, "late gift," Ronan felt as though a giant serpent had opened its blood-soaked maw and lunged straight at him. In an instant, he lost consciousness and fell to the ground. In his dream, he once again saw the iron-blooded Grand General. Back then, even knowing that the war against the giants was almost certainly a death sentence, she accepted the commander's burden without hesitation. Ronan had once asked her why. Her answer was simple. Every person in this world carries a duty they cannot ignore. As soon as her words concluded, the scene shifted abruptly. The moment had finally arrived when the eight-winged giant made its appearance. After handing him the bead, the Grand General appeared strangely relieved. "Ronan, I hope you never forgive me, because I selfishly entrusted the duty of protecting the Empire to you." Ronan desperately tried to ask her what she meant, but then he jolted awake from the dream. The moment became awkward as Ade Shan sat right beside him, staring with a deeply worried expression. Seeing this, Ronan quickly scratched his head and claimed it had only been a nightmare. Ade Shan fell silent for a moment, then softly asked, "You did all that just now because you wanted to stand up for me, didn't you?" Ronan's face immediately turned red. "No way. I just hated seeing people get bullied since I was little, that's all." Ade Shan couldn't help but laugh. "Looks like you're not very good at lying, Ronan." Then her tone turned serious. "I hope you won't hold it against Instructor Niebarger or Owen. This was all something I asked for myself. Typically, only master rank students are permitted to attend this class. Although I repeated a year, I can still barely control magic. Being allowed to listen in is a special favor I don't feel I deserve. To ensure Instructor Niebarger doesn't feel pressured, I specifically asked her to pretend not to notice how the students treat me, regardless of their behavior." Ronan was overwhelmed with disbelief upon hearing that. In his previous life, the Grand General's presence was so commanding that it inspired awe. He had never imagined that she, too, had once faced her own barriers. "Since I am the one receiving this kindness, I must also accept the price that comes with it. Even so, I still want to express my gratitude." Ronan looked at her and hesitated for a long time before finally asking, "Are you working this hard because you want to become the Grand General?" The moment he said that, Ade Shan looked utterly stunned. "How did you know my dream is to become the Grand General? Did I accidentally let it slip at some point?" Suddenly, she clenched her fists, her eyes shining with determination. "Even though I'm not strong enough yet, I will keep working toward that goal." Seeing Ronan stare at her in silence, Ade Shan assumed he found her dream ridiculous. She quickly explained, "I know it sounds unrealistic, but I'm not giving up. Everything I do is for the sake of achieving it." Looking into the longing shining in her eyes, Ronan felt even more conflicted. After all, in his previous life, Adeshan's final words had been for him to tell this version of her to live quietly, as a simple tailor. But the Adeshan standing before him now was filled to the brim with stubborn devotion to her dream, and he simply could not bring himself to say those words. Even after she left, Ronan remained unable to express them. He truly had no idea what he should do. A few days later, just as Ronan was getting ready for bed, he received a letter from Dylan. The next morning, he eagerly took Asher and Maria to the entrance of the forge. Upon entering, they discovered the place was completely empty. With no other options available, they chose to seek their own path in. To their surprise, after Ronan randomly pressed around for a while, he discovered a hidden mechanism in the wall. As the elevator slowly descended, the sight before them left all three of them stunned. The once thriving underground city had now been reduced to complete ruin. Smiths lay scattered everywhere, either dead or badly wounded. It was only after Asher pointed it out that Ronan noticed a rock giant rampaging through the underground city, hunting down the Smiths. Ronan made the call right away and ordered the faster Maria to run back to the academy for reinforcements. He had Asher use telekinesis to help him descend quickly. Just as several Smiths were about to be crushed beneath the giant's massive fist, Ronan arrived just in time for the critical moment. With a swift flash of sword light, the heavy armor on the rock giant's chest shattered. The blacksmiths he had saved stared in wide-eyed amazement. They could hardly believe that this young boy, who still appeared boyish, had defeated a rock giant with formidable defenses in a single strike. Ronan landed firmly atop the giant's remains and quickly demanded to know what had happened. The Smiths, still shaken, explained the situation to him in trembling voices. Not long ago, dozens of rock giants had suddenly emerged from beneath the underground city, smashing everything in their path and even attempting to slaughter the Smiths. Most of the giants had taken Master Dolan and several top smiths before burrowing back underground and vanishing. The one Ronan had just killed was the last rock giant remaining in this area. Once he learned that the immediate danger had passed, Ronan left Sita and Asher behind to assist with treating the wounded. He made the decision to rescue Dolan, knowing that his sword was still in Dolan's possession. Meanwhile, deep underground, Dolan clutched a sword wrapped in gray cloth, while Didaway, standing before him, was covered in wounds and clearly had been fighting for a long time. With a voice full of guilt, Dolan looked at Didaway and said, "I'm grateful that you risked your life to chase after me and protect me. But you really didn't need to stay here. With your transparent armor, you could have easily escaped safely. Just go. But Didaway roared back angrily. If you got the energy to say all that defeat is crap, then swing the damn sword in your hands instead. Yet Dolan only gripped the sword tighter. No, this sword is my masterpiece. The first swing of a milestone like this must not be tainted by someone like me, who knows nothing of swordsmanship. Didaway nearly laughed out of anger. At a time like this, you crazy old man. Before he could finish, several rock giants had already surrounded them. Their enormous hands rose high into the air, clearly intending to smash the two of them to bits. Didaway gritted his teeth and faced the blow head-on, but the giant's strength far exceeded his ability to withstand it. He spat out a mouthful of blood as the defensive magic of his transparent armor shattered completely. Just as the giant was about to strike again, a streak of red light shot in at terrifying speed, followed by countless sharp slashes that flashed through the air. The surrounding rock giants had no time to scream before they were shattered into countless pieces. Ronan landed lightly before them and said, "Leave the rest to me." Both Dylan and Didaway were stunned to see Ronan appear out of nowhere. There were numerous rock giants along the path. How did you manage to get past them? Ronan offered only a faint smile. I took care of them while rescuing the other smiths. There are only a few left on your side now. As he spoke, he extended his hand toward Dylan. You'd better hand me my sword already. The blade I'm using now won't survive many more swings. Dylan hesitated for a moment, but ultimately, he unwrapped the cloth and handed over the sword. This truly is a peerless blade, forged just for you. The only pity is that I haven't had time to make a scabbard for it yet. The moment Ronan's hand grasped the hilt, his expression changed. The sword was so light that it felt almost weightless. Yet, in his palm, he could faintly sense a burning power coursing through it. Perfect. Let's use these rock giants, known for their formidable defense, to test the power of this sword. At that moment, several more rock giants approached from the front. Without a moment's hesitation, Ronan swung the sword, and a brilliant red aura erupted from it. The overwhelming force instantly shattered the approaching rock giants into fragments. Even Ronan himself was stunned by the overwhelming power. Professor Nibberger had not lied. There truly could be such a vast disparity created by a weapon alone. Seeing this, Dylan's eyes shone brightly as he hurriedly asked if La Mancha felt right in Ronan's hand. The sword was as light as a feather, yet its hardness far surpassed that of Mithril. The Dreambird eggshell granted La Mancha a unique ability to absorb blood for self-repair, while La Mancha itself was the name of the creation Dylan admired most. Ronan, in turn, did not hesitate to praise Dylan's craftsmanship, showering him with compliments that made Dylan beam with delight. For a smith, there was no greater honor than having his work acknowledged. At that moment, Ronan walked purposefully toward the corpse of one of the rock giants. Before long, he discovered a strange magic circle on the back of its head. Rock giants, by their natural habits, typically did not move in groups and, unless provoked, would not ordinarily attack. Their unusual assault on the underground city was clearly connected to this magic circle. The group stared at the intricate design for a long time, struggling to comprehend its meaning. Even Dylan, who had lived for over 400 years, shook his head and admitted he had never encountered a pattern like this before. Even so, he could faintly sense that the residual magic was beyond the capabilities of an ordinary mage. A strong sense of unease surged in Ronan's heart, prompting him to order Didaway to take Dylan and leave first, while he ventured deeper in alone. Before he had gone very far, Ronan noticed something unusual about the footprints on the ground. In addition to the enormous tracks of the rock giants, there were several sets of footprints roughly the size of a human's, and even more than that. The walls surrounding him were embedded with numerous magical detection stones designed for warnings. Unfortunately for them, those stones were ineffective against someone like Ronan, who possessed no magic. Soon, Ronan reached the deepest part of the cavern, and what he saw made his pupils contract sharply. Not far ahead stood a golden stone giant, towering several times larger than the rock giants he had encountered before. Even though Ronan could sense that the stone giant was still sealed, it emanated a suffocating pressure that made his skin crawl. Beneath the stone giant, two figures in white robes stood conversing in low voices. Ronan began to move closer, attempting to overhear their plot. A man in white suddenly curled his lips into a sinister smile. A flame instantly gathered in his palm, and I caught the distinct sulfur stench that is unique to a blacksmith shop. I didn't expect anyone to be bold enough to come knocking. As soon as he finished speaking, the man in white hurled a blast of fire directly at Ronan. Fortunately, Ronan reacted quickly, twisting aside just in time to avoid the flames. When he saw his sneak attack miss, the man looked surprised. Well, the kid's got some moves after all. Fine, I'll tie you up first. Before his words had fully left his lips, countless burning chains shot out from his palm, lashing straight toward Ronan. Ronan's heart tightened immediately. Anyone capable of casting physicalized magic on that scale was certainly no ordinary opponent. Gripping La Mancha tightly, Ronan shattered the incoming fire chains in an instant. He then let out a mocking smile and asked, "Who exactly are you people? No matter how desperate a man and woman may be, this still isn't the kind of place for that." Ronan's arrogant attitude only seemed to entertain the man in white. "I hope your strength is as impressive as your words." The woman in white beside him frowned, clearly believing he was just wasting time. But the man couldn't have cared less. "Our mission is already complete. The underground city has been destroyed, and that alone is enough to set back the Empire's equipment-making technology significantly. Besides, this Empire is on the brink of being consumed by starlight, so if we don't have some fun now, we may never get another chance." That sentence exploded in Ronan's ears like thunder, almost identical to what Ahayat had said before dying. Ronan's eyes widened with fury. "What the hell do you mean by that, you filthy rats?" The sudden intensity in Ronan's aura caused the man in white to freeze for a moment. Why did this young man suddenly feel so unsettling? But a second later, he snapped out of it and gathered fire in his palm once more. Before his hand could even finish rising, Ronan was already right beside him. The man in white never saw the blade coming. In an instant, his arm and upper body were severed cleanly apart. "I still have many questions for you, so for now, just lie there and stay down." The woman beside him froze, cold sweat instantly soaking her back. "Why you?" Ronan remained silent as he stepped forward and seized her by the throat. There wasn't a trace of warmth in his eyes. "If you want to avoid ending up like him, you'd better answer my questions honestly." Ronan tightened his grip on the woman's throat, attempting to extract answers from her. Realizing she couldn't escape, Cirilla quickly raised the magic shield, blasting Ronan several steps backward. Ronan glanced at his trembling, numb palm, irritation flickering across his face. It was clear that this woman had decided she wasn't going to cooperate. Before the words had even settled, a cross-shaped slash tore through the air, shattering Cirilla's shield on impact. Shock filled Cirilla's face. How could this monster penetrate her magic shield? Before she could think any further, Ronan's sword plunged straight into her body. The strike knocked back her hood, revealing the pointed ears and delicate features that marked her elven heritage. Ronan questioned her coldly. "I didn't expect you to be a half-elf. What exactly are you and that guy trying to do?" Before he could press further, a massive fireball came roaring toward him. Ronan reacted instantly, spun around, and split the fireball in two with a single slash. He lifted his gaze through the firelight, and his expression instantly turned grim. Edward, whose limbs Ronan had severed earlier, was regenerating them at an astonishing speed. With bloodshot eyes, he stared at Ronan, flames surging in his palm. It was clear just how much Cirilla meant to him. "You damn bastard, get away from her!" Ronan responded by shifting his grip and forcefully driving his sword into Cirilla's thigh once more. "It seems you still don't grasp the situation. I'm offering you two choices. Either you both come with me quietly, or I will cut this elf into pieces. I'm assuming she doesn't possess the same regeneration abilities you do, correct?" Edward trembled with rage from head to toe. In the end, he extinguished the flames in his palm. "Fine, I'll go with you." Only then did Ronan nod in satisfaction. "Smart choice. If you both die here, I'm the one who takes the loss." Just as Ronan instinctively lowered his gaze towards Cirilla at his feet, he saw a strange, chilling smile curl across her face. Before Ronan could comprehend the situation, the rock giant, exuding an overwhelming pressure, had already swung its massive arm directly at him. There was no time to dodge. Ronan could only raise his sword horizontally and absorb the earth-shattering blow head-on. The force of the impact sent him flying dozens of meters in an instant. It was fortunate that Edward stepped in. "Your fireball drew the brat's attention away, allowing me the time to cast a perception-blocking spell and take control of this big guy. I was only able to move one of its arms, but with strength like that, the brat must be seriously hurt by now." At those words, flames gathered in Edward's palm once again. "Cirilla, get back to the church and report what happened. I'll handle this brat myself. This time, I'm not letting my guard down." But before he could finish speaking, his limbs were severed once more. In an instant, Ronan's figure appeared before them like a ghost. A storm of razor-sharp slashes erupted once more, tearing Edward's body to shreds on the spot. Ronan seized the hostage and spoke in a chilling tone. "Where do you think you're going to run? I've already told you. I have far too many questions for you." Cirilla was so terrified by the sight that she staggered backward and quickly drew a magic circle in front of herself. Meanwhile, Ronan pushed his battered body forward, step by step. Just as he was about to strike again, his entire body suddenly stiffened, as if it had slipped completely out of his control. All Ronan could do was grit his teeth, tighten his grip on the hilt, and struggle to maintain a fighting stance. That slash had already pushed his body far beyond its limits. The backlash from the overload left him unable to move. Instead of seizing the opportunity, Cirilla activated a teleportation circle and prepared to make her escape. "I can't promise that I would defeat you in a fight right now, but you better be prepared. Once I return, we'll uncover everything there is to know about you. Your family, your friends, they will all pay the price." Ronan desperately tried to prevent her from leaving. In his condition, all he could do was watch helplessly as Cirilla stepped closer and closer to the teleportation circle. Just as her figure was about to vanish, an enraged shout filled with bone-deep cold erupted through the cavern. "Stop right there. I have several questions for you as well." The moment those words were spoken, a strange and terrifying aura enveloped her mind. Cirilla realized in horror that her body had also stopped obeying her. Suddenly, a large, sharply defined hand shot out and gripped her face tightly. "Recently, you've accumulated more than enough crimes deserving of death. However, what angers me the most is that you had the audacity to lay a hand on my disciple." The moment she finished speaking, a massive serpent, as solid as flesh, lunged forward with its mouth wide open, snapping toward Cirilla. In that instant, Cirilla lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. After everything was settled, Nyberger sheathed her sword and turned to Ronan. "Well done. You worked hard. Go get treated first. I'll report this to the headmaster, and then we'll send those two to Rushellan." At that moment, a flicker of surprise crossed Ronan's face. Rushellan, known as the Northern Nether Fortress, was a prison situated in the middle of the sea. Rumor had it that the screams and wails of prisoners echoed there throughout the year. The guards employed every method imaginable to extract confessions from individuals. Almost no one ever emerged from that place unscathed. With that thought in mind, Ronan suddenly stood up and took Nyberger by the hand. In a voice that sounded almost pleading, he said, "Master, could you please let me go to Rushellan and witness their trial myself? This truly matters to me." Nyberger looked genuinely surprised. It was the first time she had ever seen that proud brat lower his head. "I'll think about it," she said. Meanwhile, Perugia had already been reduced to ruins. Fortunately, due to everyone's efforts, the wounded were no longer in serious danger. Maria had only been helping to move supplies, so she was still in relatively good shape. In contrast, Asher and Sita had nearly exhausted every last drop of their magical power while trying to heal the injured. Even so, what worried them more than anything else was Ronan's safety. He had said he would be back soon, but it had already been 2.5 hours. As soon as those words were spoken, a familiar voice echoed beside them. "Were you discussing me?" The moment Sita saw Ronan return, her eyes filled with tears, and she rushed forward, eager to heal him immediately. However, Ronan raised a hand to stop her. "I've already been treated down there. You all should rest first. Besides, I still have something more important to do." A few hours later, Nyberger led Ronan to the edge of a cliff. Soon after, a black griffon descended from the sky, carrying several figures dressed in black on its back. The man in front bowed and said, "Greetings, Lady Nyberger. By order of the Empire, we've come to escort the prisoners." After a brief response, Nyberger explained the overall situation of the two captives. The woman is a half-elf, which isn't particularly unusual. However, the other one poses more of a challenge. He possesses a rather bizarre regenerative ability. At that moment, a dark gleam flashed in the man's eyes. "A regenerative ability? Interesting. It's been a long time since we've had such a fascinating prisoner. Once the interrogator hears about this, he'll be thrilled." With that, the group turned to leave, taking Cirilla and Edward with them. "We'll reach out again after the interrogation is complete." Then Nyberger turned to Ronan. "I've decided to grant your request. A week is more than enough time for Rushellan to get those people to talk. I'll let you know as soon as we hear from them, so be ready to leave at any moment." In the days that followed, Ronan continued his training under Nyberger's guidance, while restoration work in the underground city of Perugia progressed simultaneously. Before long, a full week had passed in the blink of an eye. Inside Rushellan prison, sharp screams and miserable wails echoed endlessly. After a full week of close contact, Kafka was finally convinced that Edward had revealed all he knew. He then sent word to Nyberger that Ronan could be brought over. Looking at the two before him, Kafka spoke with a warm, easy smile. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the interrogator assigned to these prisoners, and I am the one receiving you today, Kafka. Please come with me. I'll explain the results of the interrogation as we go." As Ronan gazed at the gentle old man before him, he found it difficult to believe that this was truly Ruckelin's interrogator. Nyberger, meanwhile, saw right through Ronan's thoughts at a glance. That's what nearly everyone says the first time they meet him, but appearances can be deceiving. Every prisoner who falls into his hands ends up wishing for death to set them free. He is the nightmare they fear most. It was only after they reached the intersection of the prison that Kafka finally spoke again. "We're close to the holding cells now, so I'll keep this brief. First, let's discuss their background. They belong to an organization called Kraukio." Nyberger raised an eyebrow at that. "That name's new to me. Are they some kind of criminal group like Caribou?" Kafka continued, affirming that the lack of insight into this organization's true intelligence is precisely why she believes they are even more dangerous than ordinary criminal groups. From the fire that destroyed the Naran granary to the explosion at the Arcane Research Institute, most of the significant unexplained incidents across the Empire over the past year have now been confirmed as their doing. Ronan froze upon hearing that. If they had accomplished so much, why had he never heard of them in his previous life? Ronan quickly asked the interrogator if they had ever mentioned anything about starlight or referred to something like the descent of the stars. Kafka looked puzzled and replied, "That's the first time I've heard anything like that." Noticing this, Ronan awkwardly scratched his head. "I overheard it while capturing them, which made me wonder if it might be linked to that organization's true objective." As soon as he finished speaking, Kafka's expression darkened. He grabbed the bird-shaped hood beside him and pulled it over his head. A sick kind of excitement flashed in his eyes. "To think, I let the two of you see such a flaw in me during our very first meeting. How embarrassing. It seems I still haven't been honest enough with my friends. I'll need to show them a bit more sincerity." In the next moment, Kafka's aura surged violently, causing even Ronan to feel the hairs on his body stand on end beneath that icy, sinister pressure. When Ronan finally saw Edward and Cyrilla, he was stunned. The two, who had once been so arrogant, had already been tortured beyond recognition. Only their faint cries indicated that they were still alive. Kafka picked up a torture tool, heated until it glowed red, speaking in a tone so flat it made the skin crawl. "Edward is a particularly interesting friend. His body keeps regenerating due to the unique power of black magic. Dealing with someone who possesses that kind of healing ability is surprisingly straightforward. You simply keep burning them until there's nothing left to regenerate." As he spoke, he plunged the red-hot tool directly into Edward's chest without a moment's hesitation. Only when Edward was barely hanging on did Kafka finally stop. "Haven't we already opened our hearts and become friends? Friends shouldn't keep secrets from one another, don't you think?" Edward immediately burst into tears, claiming his innocence and insisting he had hidden nothing at all. Hearing this, Kafka turned to Ronan and asked, "Then why did I hear something about the descent of the stars from this guest?" As he spoke, he turned his attention to Cyrilla. "Let me warn you first. I expect you to explain this clearly right now. Miss Cyrilla doesn't possess an adorable regenerative ability like yours, so when I interrogate her, I must be much more careful." Despite this, Edward continued to show no intention of speaking. Instead, he kept begging Kafka to kill him. Watching this unfold, Ronan fell into deep thought. Their identities had already been exposed, yet they still refused to utter a word. Perhaps it wasn't that they didn't want to talk. Maybe they simply couldn't. Much like the death-sworn soldiers on the battlefield who carried vital secrets, curse magic was often embedded within them beforehand to prevent any information from leaking if they were captured. Kafka froze at this realization, then quickly turned and strode toward the door. "I'm sorry, you two. I didn't do well today. I actually forgot something so obvious. Please wait here for a moment while I go get it." 2.5 minutes later, Kafka returned, holding a grotesque object that resembled an eyeball. "This is the Eye of Curse, a unique tool designed to devour curses. When we encounter prisoners who are unable to confess due to a curse, these invaluable little devices often prove to be a tremendous help." With that, Kafka pressed the Eye of Curse against Edward's forehead. In an instant, countless tendrils shot straight into his skull, as wave after wave of agonized screams echoed around him. The Eye of Curse continued to overflow with a deep blue glow. The curse removal process finally came to an end, only when Edward's pupils turned completely azure. After that, Kafka leaned in and asked, "My friend, let me ask you again. What exactly is this so-called descent of stars?" Edward gasped for breath in ragged pulls, his voice hoarse and weak. "The stars are eternal beings, the only existence capable of saving all the weak in this land. As the torches, we will eliminate every unstable factor and await the child of the stars to descend from beyond the heavens." Hearing this, Ronan strode toward Edward, fury etched across his face. "The child of the stars you're referring to, is it a Hayut and the others?" Extreme shock flashed across Edward's eyes. "How do you know the name a Hayut?" Beside him, the weakened Cyrilla hurriedly attempted to intervene, but it was already too late. Edward's body began to swell at a terrifying speed. Seeing that, Ronan froze in place. Kafka immediately reacted, pulling Ronan behind him. Then, a magic shield is thrown up, forcefully blocking the self-destruction. Once the smoke cleared, Kafka let out a regretful sigh. It seemed that two separate restrictions had been implanted within him. The first prevented him from revealing anything related to the stars to outsiders, while the second triggered self-destruction the moment he mentioned certain names. After saying this, Kafka grabbed Ronan's shoulder, his gaze darkening. "Lord Ronan, if my guess is correct, the name you just spoke is highly classified information within their organization. How did you come to know it?" The moment the question left his mouth, magic began to gather quietly in his palm. He was clearly prepared to compel Ronan to stay until he explained everything. However, Ronan's expression remained unchanged. He simply brushed Kafka's hand away. "I happened to overhear it while I was capturing them." Kafka was well aware that Ronan was hiding something. But when he saw the raw hatred in Ronan's eyes toward the star giant, hatred so intense it was practically spilling over, he felt a chill run down his spine. Ultimately, he lowered his guard, believing that Ronan would never take any action that could harm the Empire. But before he could press further, a cold blade rested against his throat, and an icy chill spread through his entire body in an instant. Nieberger's eyes blazed with ferocity. "Are you planning to torture my disciple for answers right in front of me?" Kafka instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly released Ronan's hand, his voice trembling with panic and respect. "I only wanted to make sure, former Sword Saint." He quickly bowed to Ronan, adding, "My apologies, Lord Ronan. I overstepped just now." The speed of that complete reversal left Ronan momentarily at a loss. After standing there awkwardly for a moment, he finally waved it off, saying it was fine as long as the misunderstanding had been cleared up. Seeing that Ronan wasn't going to pursue it, Kafka finally let out a long breath of relief. He then lowered his gaze to the Eye of Curse lying on the floor, his tone heavy with regret. "I can't believe this interrogation cost me an Eye of Curse. What a waste. Cute as they are, these little creatures are even harder to catch than ordinary fantasy beings." As he spoke, he turned toward the remaining Eye of Curse perched on his shoulder, and a glimmer of hope rose in his eyes once more. "At least there's still one left. As long as we're more careful from here on, the interrogation should be able to continue." But at that very moment, the hope on Kafka's face froze, replaced by sheer shock. The Eye of the Curse, which had never once come into contact with Edward or Cyrilla, had somehow turned blue as well. Kafka's heart sank instantly, and a terrifying possibility flashed through his mind. The only explanation was that when he cast the magic shield moments ago, he must have accidentally come into contact with Ronan, triggering a corruption in the Eye of Curse. Realizing this, Kafka quickly placed the remaining Eye of Curse into Ronan's hand. "Lord Ronan, I beg your forgiveness for my boldness," but before he could finish, the Eye of the Curse exploded the moment it made contact with Ronan. Kafka stood there, completely stunned. In all his years of using the Eye of Curse, this was the first time he had ever seen anything like it. Kafka raised his head, his expression turning deadly serious. "Lord Ronan, listen to me carefully. It seems there is a curse hidden within your body. Have you ever felt restricted in some way? For instance, is there something everyone else can do that you cannot?" Ronan's heart jolted violently. Could the reason he had never been able to sense magic all this time truly be because of that? Noticing that Ronan was reluctant to share more, Kafka decided not to push him further. "If you don't want anyone else to know, I won't say a word. Besides, this isn't something I can handle on my own. You must remember one thing. Judging by the intensity of this curse alone, the person who cast it must harbor an extraordinary bitterness toward you. From now on, you need to exercise extreme caution." Kafka paused for a moment before continuing. That brief silence hung in the air, allowing the weight of his thoughts to settle before he resumed speaking. "You don't have to panic too much. As far as I know, Professor Secret, the legendary mage Orphilion, is one of the greatest experts on curses in this continent. He might be able to assist you. On the way back to Philion, Ronan experienced an unbearable itch in his eyes. Coupled with the crushing realization that a curse was hidden within him, this only heightened his restlessness and agitation. Nai-Byroger noticed his distress and could no longer hold back from offering comfort. Itchy eyes are often a sign that a curse is beginning to weaken, so there's no need to worry too much. Then she changed the subject. But do you truly have no idea who might have placed that curse on you? Ronan shook his head, his voice filled with confusion and disbelief. I've always believed that I treated people with kindness. I've never made a mortal enemy, so I can't fathom who could possibly hate me this much. Nai-Byroger, however, was clearly not convinced. She silently turned her gaze toward the carriage window, replaying in her mind the last time Ronan stood up for Adeshan. Just then, Ronan suddenly spoke up, breaking her train of thought. By the way, Master, thank you for stopping Kafka back there. If you hadn't intervened, I doubt he would have let me off so easily. Nai-Byroger let out a soft laugh. I was just doing what any teacher is supposed to do. There's no need to thank me. At those words, Ronan fell quiet. His impression of Nai-Byroger deepened even further. This former sword saint was not only overwhelmingly skilled, but her character was also beyond reproach. As he pondered the situation, another question quietly emerged in his mind. In his previous life, he and the Grand General had fought fiercely until the very last moment. So why had he never once encountered this formidable former sword saint? Early the next morning, Ronan rushed to Pillar Park, the training area designated for the magic department. Adeshan had already been waiting there for some time under Nai-Byroger's instructions, and as soon as she spotted Ronan, a bright smile lit up her face. Ronan, it's been such a long time. If Professor Nai-Byroger hadn't requested it, I might have had to wait even longer to see you. How have you been lately? The warm, open energy radiating from Adeshan immediately left Ronan feeling a bit flustered. After all, he still hadn't figured out how to face her. Noticing his awkwardness, Adeshan decided to change the subject and let the tension ease. I heard from Professor Nai-Byroger that you wish to remove the curse within you. Ronan nodded slightly as he followed Adeshan ahead. I heard that Professor Secret is an expert in this field, so I wanted to come and give it a try. As he spoke, he glanced around at the dreary surroundings. He couldn't help but mutter under his breath. I never expected a professor like him to live in a place like this. He must have a seriously strange personality. Adeshan laughed in agreement. That's true. Professor Secret's office is just as unusual. If you're not in the magic department, you can barely even find it. That's why I specifically asked a close friend from the magic department to lead us. The moment she finished speaking, a purple figure suddenly appeared right in front of them. In an instant, the newcomer leaped into Adeshan's arms like an overly clingy kitten. Sister Adeshan, I missed you. This is a new spell I learned. Pretty amazing, right? Adeshan couldn't help but laugh. I apologize for calling you out so suddenly. Something urgent came up, and I wanted to ask for your help in finding Professor Secret. At that moment, Albrecht lifted his head and affectionately rubbed against the back of Adeshan's hand, looking utterly love-struck. His answer came without the slightest hesitation. It's fine, Sister Adeshan. If it's something you want, I'd do anything. Seeing that scene, Ronan froze in place. This was the same person who had once invited him to join House Sakurja, the arrogant individual who seemed to carry pride in every inch of his being. Just as Albrecht was about to continue clinging to Adeshan and fussing over her, he caught sight of Ronan standing nearby out of the corner of his eye. The moment Albrecht realized someone else was present, his expression darkened instantly, and his mind seemed to freeze. Acknowledging that he had finally been noticed, Ronan had no choice but to speak first and break the awkward silence. Regaining his composure, Albrecht sprang out of Adeshan's arms. What are you doing here, and why are you with Sister Adeshan? Though he appeared reluctant, Albrecht ultimately led Ronan to an old house. As soon as Ronan sensed the eerie atmosphere surrounding them, he couldn't help but frown. His tone was laced with both suspicion and amusement. Don't tell me you're planning to silence me here just because I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Hearing that, Albrecht immediately bristled once more. Shut your mouth and just follow me. Albrecht then led Ronan into the house. But the only thing waiting inside was a sleeping old woman. Ronan was left speechless and instinctively glanced at Albrecht. Could this really be Professor Secret? Albrecht didn't respond to his question. Instead, he confidently walked toward the old woman. There's just one final step remaining. No matter what you see in a moment, try not to be too surprised. As he spoke, Albrecht slowly raised an arm and began chanting an obscure, complex magic spell. In the next instant, the motionless old woman suddenly snapped her eyes open, and her mouth rapidly swelled at an alarming rate. A powerful suction force erupted from within her mouth. When Ronan opened his eyes again, he found himself in an office filled from floor to ceiling with books. Ronan was completely stunned. He had never anticipated that the entrance to this place would be designed in such a bizarre manner. At that moment, a child suddenly appeared in front of Ronan. "So, you're Miss Nibburger's new disciple?" Just as she mentioned, "There's an extremely vicious curse hidden inside your body." Ronan stared at the child in disbelief. "Don't tell me this is Professor Secret." Secret could easily see through his confusion. "Don't be surprised. My actual age is over 80, but we can discuss that later. Right now, the most important thing is to remove the curse inside you." As he spoke, Secret lightly snapped his fingers. A burst of dazzling light illuminated the scene. A strange and intricate magic circle instantly unfolded beneath Ronan's feet, while countless half-transparent ancient symbols appeared and slowly revolved around his body. Secret gazed at the circle, his brows tightening slightly as a mix of amazement and gravity entered his voice. "I honestly didn't expect a curse within you to be this complicated. Countless curses are intertwined, layered on top of one another, and each one carries the eerie aura of an ancient sorcerer. Any cursed mage with even a hint less skill would likely be at a loss for where to start." Hearing that, Ronan's heart sank. "So, can the curse inside me still be removed?" Secret waved a hand and said, "Don't worry. The variety and number of curses within you have definitely exceeded my expectations. But I came prepared. I will create an imaginary world within your consciousness and project the curses that dwell inside you into it. Your task is straightforward. Identify the root curse that binds you and eliminate it. Only by severing the source can the curse be fully broken." Before Ronan could ask any further questions, Secret's finger had already pressed against his forehead. In the very next second, Ronan felt his consciousness violently seized by an unseen force. It plunged straight into a pitch-black abyss until he lost all awareness. When he opened his eyes again, the scene before him had already transformed. The instant he spotted the familiar house, his entire body went rigid, his mind grew hazy, and a chill ran through him. How could the source of the curse be here? Before Ronan could regain his composure, a clear and cheerful child's laughter suddenly echoed around him. Then little Iller came running into a nearby house at full speed. "Mom, I'm back!" Almost instinctively, Ronan followed her inside. Upon entering, he saw Iller leaning over a cradle, gazing at the baby inside with shining eyes, her face radiating joy and curiosity. "Little brother is so cute, but why is little Ronan sleeping every day? Is he sick?" Just then, a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Iller approached slowly, her features mirroring Iller's by 7 or 8 parts. A warm smile rested on her face. "Babies need plenty of sleep to grow up healthy. Of course, if little Ronan is really sick, then Iller, as his big sister, you must take good care of him." At those words, Iller excitedly raised her tiny fist. Her voice was youthful, but her resolve was unwavering. "No problem, Mom. I'll protect Ronan for the rest of my life." Ronan stood there staring at the warm scene before him, so bright it almost hurt his eyes. For a moment, he completely forgot why he had come. Suddenly, the harsh sound of a door being pushed open shattered the tranquility. In an instant, a bone-piercing chill and an eerie aura swept through the room. Every hair on Ronan's body stood on end, as a powerful sense of dread surged within him. He desperately tried to turn and look at the figure by the door, but his body felt as if it had been struck by a paralysis spell. He couldn't move at all. All he could do was watch helplessly as a blurred shadow slowly stepped inside. The moment she saw the newcomer, Iller ran toward them in delight. However, the shadow violently shook off her hand and walked directly toward little Ronan in the cradle. Seeing this, the mother assumed he was simply eager to see the baby, and her warm smile never wavered. The child lay right there in the cradle, looking just like him. In the very next instant, the shadow abruptly raised a hand toward the mother. His lips moved as if chanting something, but Ronan couldn't hear a single word. Then, the mother collapsed directly to the floor. The sight instantly left little Iller frozen in shock. Before she could utter a word, the shadow extended its cold hand toward her and employed the same method once more, watching as his mother and sister fell one after the other. Ronan felt as if an invisible hand had gripped his heart in a death hold, rendering him powerless. He could only stand there and watch everything unfold. After finishing that, the shadow stretched its claws toward little Ronan in the cradle. Countless curses emerged from its hand and poured endlessly into Ronan's body. At that moment, Ronan finally realized that the shadow before him was the true source of the curse. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Secret's hands had begun to tremble uncontrollably as he sustained the spell. Even after preparing as thoroughly as I did, I still didn't expect my magic power to be drained so quickly. The intensity of this curse is far beyond anything I had imagined. Albert had clearly never seen Professor Secret pushed into such a desperate corner before, and he couldn't help but ask, if that's the case, how many curses does he actually have on him? Secret slowly raised his head, his expression more serious than ever. Ignoring the intensity and focusing solely on quantity, there are likely around 10 curses within him. The one I just burned through all my magic to remove was only a single layer among them. Just as Secret completed his preliminary assessment of Ronan's overall condition, Ronan, within the realm of consciousness, finally broke free from the restraints on his body after the shadow departed. Ronan didn't pursue him immediately. Instead, he hurried directly to the two individuals lying on the ground. After checking them carefully, he discovered they had merely fallen into a deep sleep and were not in any real danger. Only then did he finally exhale in relief. Ronan clenched his teeth, forcing himself to calm the storm of emotions surging within him. He understood better than anyone that the shadow was the true source of this curse. Yet the murderous rage in his chest refused to subside. In the next instant, his sword, La Mancha, materialized effortlessly at his side. A heartbeat later, the door shattered into pieces. Ronan burst outside at astonishing speed, determined to catch the shadow, but as soon as he rushed out, he abruptly halted in his tracks. The shadow hadn't moved at all. It stood nearby, as if it had been waiting for Ronan to pursue it. Ronan didn't hesitate for a moment. Gripping La Mancha once more, he charged directly at the shadow. To his surprise, the shadow calmly lifted a hand and gathered a mass of dark magic. In an instant, that magic transformed into the shape of a shadowy longsword in Medaire's grasp. With a casual swing, it effortlessly blocked Ronan's full-force strike. Ronan froze in place, unable to comprehend that even a curse could wield a sword. From that exchange alone, it was clear that the Shadow's mastery of swordsmanship far surpassed his own. The moment Ronan hesitated, the Shadow's figure transformed into a streak of light and zipped past him. A second later, he collapsed to his knees with a heavy thud. Even La Mancha almost slipped from his grasp. Yet the shadow merely cast him a cold glance before turning away and leaving. Seeing this, Ronan pushed himself back to his feet and let out a hoarse yet thunderous roar. "Why are you doing this? Given how my sister and mother treated you, there's no doubt that you are my father. However, as my father, you attacked both my sister and my mother, and you even cursed me with your own hands. Can you still call yourself a father after all of that?" As soon as those words were spoken, violent red magic surged wildly around Ronan. With nothing left in his eyes but resolve, he poured every ounce of strength he had into one final charge at the shadow. This time, the shadow didn't shift to block him. It simply closed its eyes slowly. Ronan swung without hesitation, severing the shadow's head. "If you want to talk, fine. I'll uncover the truth myself. Now, get the hell out of my body." As the shadow fully dissipated, Ronan's consciousness was violently yanked back into reality. He shook his head vigorously, striving to free himself from the unbearable tension of battle. Just then, a gentle yet aged voice emerged from behind him. "So you're finally awake, Ronan. How was the journey?" Ronan turned around, his face etched with confusion. Standing there was an old man dressed exactly like Professor Secret. Suddenly, realization struck Ronan, and he blurted out, "Don't tell me you're the real Professor Secret. Why did you suddenly return to an appearance that matches your age? Was it because you helped remove my curse?" Secret let out a quiet chuckle and said, "That has nothing to do with you, so there's no need to worry." "But Ronan, haven't you noticed that something about you has changed?" Only then did Ronan take a moment to calm himself and thoroughly assess his own condition. When he looked at the old man again, he was shocked to see immense, overwhelming magic emanating from Secret's body. "To be honest, the moment I first laid eyes on you, I could tell you were anything but ordinary. But now, it seems you are even more powerful than I had imagined." Hearing this, Secret laughed with satisfaction. "It seems you can finally sense magic properly now, which means the curse has been successfully removed." After that, Ronan recounted everything he had experienced in the world of consciousness, from beginning to end. Secret pulled out a notebook and meticulously recorded every detail. "From what you've described, the curse within you manifested by using memories that even you no longer recall as its vessel. It seems the one who placed this curse on you was your father. However, I remember you mentioning that neither you nor your sister has any memory of your parents, as if all traces of them have been erased from your minds." Ronan nodded, but I still couldn't make out the shadow's face clearly. Based on how my sister and mother treated him, he had to be my father. More importantly, as he was hurting them, I could sense a strange yet profoundly heavy sorrow emanating from him. Secret took a sip of coffee and nodded thoughtfully. If that's the case, then everything makes sense. Your father didn't just seal your ability to sense magic, he also tampered with your memories. During that process, part of his own memories must have been transferred into you by accident. This kind of occurrence isn't unusual. Magic related to memory often leads to side effects like this. That's why the world of consciousness naturally formed based on his memories this time. The reason you were able to use magic briefly before breaking the curse is likely that the awareness suppressed by the curse temporarily resurfaced at that moment. This, in turn, restored your ability to sense magic. Hearing that, Ronan lowered his gaze to his palm, where several strands of multicolored light softly wound around his fingers. The light is spilling out around me now. Is that magic? Secret nodded. For now, you can only see it. However, if you want to use and control magic as skillfully as an ordinary person, you'll need to remove 2 more curses. This process will be long and challenging, especially since each curse was cast by exceptionally powerful ancient sorcerers. With that, Secret closed his notebook. Go back and rest for now. Once I'm ready, I'll let you know. Ronan had just begun to rise when his entire body suddenly went stiff. At some point, the secret before him had transformed back into the form of a child. Noticing Ronan's stare, Secret shrugged helplessly. My situation is somewhat similar to yours. It's complicated in its own way. Ronan, there are a few things I need to share with you. I can see that your mind is in turmoil right now, but I hope you'll find a way to gather yourself soon. Instead of being weighed down by past memories, focus on cherishing what you have in front of you and the future that lies ahead. After hearing this, Ronan stood up and gave Professor Secret a deep bow. I understand, Professor. Thank you. I truly mean that. Meanwhile, inside the Perukia mine, after hearing that the rock giant had attacked the blacksmith shop, Duke Ujev, Shuripan's father, rushed to the scene. He looked up at the strange rock giant that had once severely wounded Ronan with a single blow, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He hadn't expected this rock giant to be even larger than he had imagined. More than surprise, Ujev felt a surge of curiosity. He had never anticipated that such a formidable opponent could be restrained by a first-year student alone. While Ujev was lost in thought, one of his subordinates approached from behind and began reporting on the progress of Perukia's restoration. The man was Norton, Yugov's personal guard, and the commander of House Grancia's Night Order, reporting to your grace. The restoration of Perukia is progressing smoothly. At this rate, normal operations should be fully restored in about another week. We have diligently followed your orders and committed all our resources to tracking down the mastermind behind this. Unfortunately, we still haven't uncovered a single worthwhile lead. It feels as though they have vanished into thin air. Thanks to information from Philian Academy, I've already identified the student who prevented this disaster. Would you like to meet him? Ujev nodded slowly in response. A trace of anticipation flickered in his eyes. Then let's go meet this young hero from Philian. But as soon as he finished speaking, the rock giant, which had been dormant, suddenly illuminated its eyes with a crimson glow. Its massive body slowly rose and shifted into an attacking stance. The vigilant Norton quickly took notice and said, "Forgive me, your grace, but could you please step back for a moment? Leave this to me in the Night Order." Ujev raised a hand to stop him, his tone so calm it bordered on casual. "No need. We're short on time, aren't we?" As soon as those words were spoken, a brilliant blue light erupted from Ujev's eyes. He gripped his sword and channeled power into it. In the next instant, a terrifying blue sword aura erupted outward. Even the emotionless rock giant seemed to hesitate for the briefest moment upon sensing the overwhelming force behind that strike. Then, beneath that single slash, its enormous body shattered into countless fragments of stone. After finishing, Ujev slowly sheathed his sword. With the same calm expression, he turned around and said, "Let's go. It's time to meet Philian's little hero." Meanwhile, Ronan had just returned to his dormitory and was preparing to rest when he suddenly heard a rapid knock at the door. Looking at Norton standing there, Ronan asked sharply, "What do you want?" The moment he heard that, veins bulged on Norton's forehead, and his voice dripped with contempt. "Do you even know who you're speaking to, and you still dare to act as arrogant?" It was only then that Ronan took a serious look at the man standing before him. But the moment he did, his heart trembled. The magic within him felt unusually sinister, and intertwined with it was a bizarre aura that seemed strangely familiar. Just as the tension between them was about to boil over, Ujev reached out and patted Norton on the shoulder, signaling him to step back. "That's enough, Norton. We arrived at his door without any prior notice. We were the rude ones to begin with." Ujev then gave Ronan a slight bow. "I apologize for my guard's behavior just now. If you don't mind, could you spare a little time to talk with me?" Once Ronan realized that the man before him was the head of House Grancia, he immediately lowered his guard and invited the two of them into his room. After they sat down, Ugev placed an exquisite sword sheath in front of Ronan. Ronan looked puzzled. It was just a sword sheath. Why would it require him to come here in person? At that, Ugev took a calm sip of tea and said, "Master Dolan specifically instructed me time and again that this must be delivered into your hands personally. I've never seen that old man take anything so seriously. The bond between House Grancia and Perugia is like that of comrades who have fought side by side for years. My own sword, Perud, was also forged by Master Dolan." As he spoke, Ugev produced an identity token engraved with the seal of the family head. "That's why I should be the one thanking you even more. You saved Perugia, and you also preserved our family's industry that is rooted there." Ronan was immediately taken aback. If the identity token Shurapan had once given to his sister was enough to purchase a small city, then the one in Duke Ugev's hand could likely buy 3. Ugev took a delicate sip of tea. "Maria and Asher, who fought alongside you, should have received their gifts by now. I can't help but wonder if they liked them." Upon hearing that, Ronan felt a bit awkward and quickly reassured the Duke that there was no need for concern. He could already envision the two of them looking overwhelmingly grateful the moment they received those gifts. After a brief exchange of polite conversation, Ugev suddenly set his teacup down and his tone grew more somber. "Now, let's shift our focus to another topic. What do you know about the masterminds behind this incident? Would you mind sharing?" Before his words had fully settled, a terrifying wave of magical pressure erupted from Ugev's body. "I'm very interested in these shameless cowards hiding in the shadows." Feeling the weight of that crushing aura, Ronan was deeply shaken. So this was the true strength of the Lord of House Grancia? After taking a moment to calm himself, Ronan slowly opened his mouth. "I don't know how much you already understand, but those rats are even crazier than you can imagine." As soon as those words were spoken, the veins on Norton's face began twitching violently. Ronan immediately sensed that something was off. This man named Norton had hardly moved at all since entering the room. But the moment Ronan mentioned the rats, a strange aura began to leak uncontrollably from his body. That aura was identical to the one Edward and Cyrilla had emitted before, equally repulsive. When Ronan suddenly fell silent, Duke Ugev asked in confusion, "Ronan, why did you stop? Are you feeling unwell?" At those words, Ronan's heart shuddered violently and disbelief flooded his mind. Ugev was one of the greatest powerhouses on the entire continent, yet he appeared completely oblivious to even the slightest abnormality. Perhaps he was the only one who could see it. To test the thought forming in his mind, Ronan continued, "Your Grace, have you ever heard of Cratio, the organization that worships the star giant?" The moment Ronan spoke those words, a fierce light ignited in Norton's eyes, and the strange aura surrounding him suddenly intensified significantly. Yet Ugev still noticed nothing. He asked calmly, "Did you uncover all of this yourself? I never imagined there was an organization like that hidden within the Empire." In response, Ronan curled his lips into a faintly mocking smile. "I pried the information out of the 2 members I caught. It didn't even take much. I only had to lop off their limbs, and they spilled everything right away. Those fools even began crying and begging me to spare their lives. It was utterly pathetic. Would your Grace like me to elaborate further?" At that, Ugev quickly waved his hand. "That won't be necessary. I'll confirm the rest through the official documents from Richelon prison. I'd rather not lose my appetite before dinner." Ronan remained silent, but by that point, he already had his answer. Ever since just now, Norton had clearly been on the verge of losing control of the aura that was leaking from him. After that round of probing, Ronan was fully convinced that something was wrong with Norton. Now that the fish had taken the bait, he escorted the Duke out while speaking respectfully. "Your Grace, you may attend to your other affairs. Tomorrow, I will write down everything I know and send it to you, particularly the details regarding Ayut." Ronan deliberately emphasized the last sentence, his gaze briefly passing over Norton. It was clear he was speaking for Norton's benefit. Night descended rapidly. At that hour, Ronan lay in bed, appearing to be fast asleep. A shadow slipped into his room like a ghost. In the next instant, a vicious gleam flashed in Norton's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he swung his sword directly at Ronan's bed. Just as the blade was about to strike, the figure on the bed vanished into thin air. Then Ronan's voice echoed down from the ceiling. There was even a hint of amusement in his voice. "I knew you'd come tonight. It's nice to finally meet you. The third Ratocroxio." Norton's face contorted with disbelief as he spun around, raising his hand to strike once more. Ronan lazily pointed to one side and said, "Why don't you look over there first? I went out of my way to invite a very special guest for you." Norton followed the direction Ronan pointed, and his entire body froze. Shuri Pan sat in a chair nearby, his eyes blazing with fury as he glared at Norton. "You'd better have a damn good explanation for this," he warned. Norton showed no inclination to explain himself whatsoever. Instead, he slammed one foot firmly into the ground. In an instant, several pitch-black chains erupted from around his body, lashing out in every direction. Ronan immediately felt his body grow unbearably heavy. His brows furrowed immediately as alarm surged in his mind. So, this was the pressure of Norton's aura? Before Ronan could contemplate his next move, Norton charged at Shuri Pan, sword in hand. There was a hint of false regret in his voice. "What a shame, young master. I truly didn't want things between us to end this way. But it's all Ronan's fault. He ruined everything. Still, I'm fortunate that you haven't mastered controlling your aura yet. With your soft-hearted nature, I doubt you would dare use that wild sword style if innocent people could get hurt. Would you?" Shuri Pan ground his teeth so hard that his jaw nearly cracked. Even the hand gripping his sword trembled slightly. "Your strength is nothing like what I once knew. Have you been hiding your true power all this time? I always believed my family treated you well. So when did you decide to betray me?" Norton responded with a scornful sneer. With a slight twist of his wrist, he effortlessly redirected Shuri Pan's block. His voice was cold and unwavering as he declared, "From the very beginning, I was never a servant of House Granzia." The moment those words were spoken, he summoned all of his magic, clearly intending to kill Shuri Pan with a single strike. Shuri Pan's expression grew colder than ever, yet his voice remained eerily calm. "That was all I needed to confirm. Ronan, do whatever you want now." Before his words had fully registered, Ronan's figure flashed into existence, intercepting Norton's lethal blow with his sword. Ronan glanced back at Shuri Pan over his shoulder, his expression one of helpless annoyance. "You really are an idiot. You stretched this out just to hear him say that much himself?" Norton stared in stunned disbelief at the suddenly reappearing Ronan, clearly not expecting him to arrive so quickly. In the moment Norton faltered, Shuri Pan seized the opportunity and brought his sword crashing down, unleashing a fierce wave of sword aura that cut straight toward him. Only then did Norton snap back to his senses and throw himself backward, barely escaping the strike. He had never imagined that, despite the suppression of his aura, both of them could still unleash such powerful sword attacks. Realizing that prolonging the situation would eliminate any chance of victory, Norton gritted his teeth and turned to flee. The violent clash had already created enough commotion to attract the professors of Filian Academy. Once they arrived, there would be no escape for him. Before Norton could take more than a few steps, Shuri Pan's figure was already hovering above him. His voice dripped with icy fury. "You're right, Norton. I still can't master the family's secret sword art as perfectly as my father. Yet, knowing that, you still dared to enter a place like this. There are no innocent bystanders here, only you damned traitor." As soon as those words were spoken, Shuri Pan's aura erupted. Countless sharp sword energies converged into a massive tornado. It roared straight toward Norton. This was House Granzia's secret sword technique, known as Storm Sword. Norton's expression shifted dramatically as he quickly raised his blade to defend himself. However, the power of the Storm Sword far exceeded anything he had anticipated. The sword's aura shattered his defense in an instant and engulfed him completely. By the time the storm subsided, every meridian in Norton's body had been severed by sword energy, leaving him with only the faintest glimmer of life. Ronan then approached with his arms folded, a faintly amused smile playing on his lips. "You left him alive in the end, but I'm not sure he can survive long enough to reach Rochellen." Shuri Pan's expression remained grim, with no trace of relief on his face. "I never imagined there would be a traitor hidden within my family for 4 long years. I must send this news back to House Granzia immediately. For now, I am leaving this place in your hands." With that, he said nothing more and turned to sprint toward House Granzia's domain. Ronan watched his figure fade into the distance, muttering a few curses under his breath. Before he could finish, a faint light shimmered behind him, and a portal materialized out of nowhere. In the next moment, Nibberger and the headmaster stepped through, urgently asking Ronan what had happened. Ronan turned to face them and froze in place. Nibberger was wearing pajamas adorned with cute little snake patterns, making her appearance completely different from usual. However, noticing the restrained anger on her face, Ronan refrained from joking around too much. He quickly gave a thumbs up and forced out a few exaggerated compliments. To be safe, Ronan quickly sobered up and instructed the two of them to repeat after him. Ayut is a lunatic. Nibberger and the headmaster looked completely baffled, yet they repeated the phrase nonetheless. Only then did Ronan finally relax and share everything that had just happened, from beginning to end. When the headmaster heard everything, his expression turned gravely serious. I never expected that even a great noble house like Rancia could have already been infiltrated by the Kraukil traitor. This situation is even worse than I imagined. Thanks to you, Ronan, the Empire narrowly avoided a catastrophe. Being praised to his face by the headmaster made Ronan scratch his head awkwardly, but he shared most of what had happened without holding back. He deliberately kept secret the fact that he could see the strange magic within Norn. He understood clearly that if that secret were to come to light, not only would he be at risk, but everyone around him could also become Kraukio's next target. This situation will soon initiate a large-scale investigation throughout the Empire, with House Ranzia at its core, so there's no need for you to worry too much. That being said, ever since the incident at the Perukia blacksmith shop, the Empire has owed you a debt. As the headmaster of Filian Academy, I believe it's time to reward you properly. Ronan, is there something you desire? The moment he heard that, Ronan's spirits lifted instantly, and a spark ignited in his eyes. He had been planning something for quite a while. Early the next morning, Ronan posted a recruitment notice on the Academy bulletin board. His ultimate goal in creating this club was to build up manpower in advance, preparing himself to confront the giant commanders of the future. As the first club in the Academy's history permitted to conduct field training, the announcement quickly attracted a large crowd of students. However, to everyone's surprise, after 2.5 full days, Ronan's club had still not recruited a single member, aside from Brahm, who had already committed to joining beforehand. The reason was simple. Anyone who wanted to join had to survive several rounds under Ronan's scrutiny and sign a life-and-death waiver on the spot. Consequently, the entire academy now believed that even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to survive Ronan's club. Staring at the empty recruitment booth, Ronan could only sigh helplessly just as he was about to pack up and abandon the whole endeavor. Suddenly, a soft female voice floated in from the side. Ronan immediately looked up. In the corner of the recruitment area stood a figure in a winter cloak and hood, appearing suddenly where no one had been moments before. The fact that he hadn't sensed her presence at all made Ronan instantly wary. However, he concealed his unease behind a bright smile and asked if she was there to join the club. In response to his question, the newcomer slowly raised a hand and pulled back her hood, revealing a pale and delicate face. But her gaze didn't land on Ronan at all. Instead, it fixed directly on Sita beside him. In a soft voice, she asked, "If I join the club, can I pet it?" Ronan immediately broke into a grin and answered without hesitation, "Of course, Sita's always by my side. If you join, you can pet her as long as you want." At that moment, the girl's cheeks flushed red, and her affection for Sita was clearly visible in her eyes. Then, Ronan pointed toward the Magitech training dummy beside them. "I haven't even asked her name yet. After the entrance test, it was straightforward. Just use one of your moves on that Magitech dummy." Upon hearing this, the girl immediately raised her hand without hesitation. In the next instant, magic rapidly swirled around her body. Amophilia, a third-year student from the magic department, Adashan, who had been nearby, quickly covered her mouth in shock. The spell Ophelia was using was dark element magic, one of the most challenging forms of magic to control. Yet, she wielded it with near-perfect precision. What Ronan noticed was an even subtler detail. He could clearly see that intertwined with the dark magic in Ophelia's palm was a faint yet remarkably pure trace of blood magic. At that moment, Ophelia slowly lowered her arm. A massive claw of magic formed instantly, tearing through the air with fierce force as it shot toward the Magitech dummy. With a thunderous crash, 3 deep gashes were carved into its body. Just as Ronan was about to speak, sensing the immense power of Ophelia, her voice suddenly echoed directly in his mind. "So you really did notice? Please keep this a secret from me. Let's talk somewhere else. I have a few things I want to ask you as well." Ronan quickly understood and nodded slightly. He soon followed Ophelia to a quiet corner just outside the Academy Square. As soon as they arrived, Ophelia eagerly scooped Sita into her arms, her face radiating pure delight. "I can't believe this little one can actually absorb the surrounding magic. Fantasy species are truly remarkable." After hearing that, Ronan adjusted his tone slightly and probed her with calm curiosity. "In my eyes, you're pretty amazing too. Last I checked, vampires left the Empire a long time ago. Ophelia revealed everything as she gently stroked Sita's fur. She slowly explained that not all vampires had left. A very small number of our people remained in various corners of the empire. Everyone is afraid of drawing trouble, so we've kept ourselves hidden and stayed out of sight. Hearing this, Ronan immediately pressed further. Then why take the risk of being exposed just to join our club? Was it really only because of Sita? Ophelia met his gaze with complete sincerity and nodded. That's right. The first time I saw Sita in the square, I could feel the blood magic unique to our kind emanating from him. At that moment, understanding suddenly dawned on Ronan. It became clear why Sita had been able to absorb energy through blood from the moment he was born. The power within him was, in fact, a vampire ability. When Ophelia heard that, she froze in disbelief. Training in blood magic typically requires 3 to 5 years of dedication. However, he mastered it immediately after birth and already possesses an extraordinary amount of dense blood energy. As she voiced this realization, the curiosity in her eyes when she gazed at Sita only intensified. Ophelia slowly lifted her head. Looking at Ronan with pitifully earnest eyes, she asked, I originally joined just to stay close to this little one. But now, can I ask for one more thing? Could Sita help me with research on a regular basis? If you agree, I promise I'll actively participate in club activities. Ronan gazed into her sincere eyes, realized she had no intention of harming Sita, and finally nodded. The following day, Ronan led the club members to the Badian Mountains for field training. This mountain range was situated in an unexplored area of the empire, making it particularly perilous. And the moment they arrived at the entrance, the pure magic saturating the air was enough to make Maria click her tongue in amazement. Meanwhile, Ronan lowered his gaze, looking down the mountain with a grave expression. At the foot of the slope lay a village built by beastmen. The ram stared in disbelief. Could beastmen really build a place like that? Ronan didn't deny it. Instead, he explained in a serious tone that in unstable border regions like this, it's common to find traces of beastmen. Currently, they are still operating at the scale of a village. However, beastmen reproduce at an astonishing rate. Before long, their population will expand throughout the entire mountain range. When that occurs, the nearby towns will face significant consequences. As he spoke, Ronan turned to the people behind him. Our first task on this training expedition is to wipe out this beastman village before they have the chance to spread. Asher was stunned when he heard that. There must be at least several hundred of them down there. Can just a few of us really handle that? Ronan glanced down at the village again and said, Relax. Ordinary beastmen like those aren't all that strong. As long as we avoid the dominant species in this area, the ogres you'll all be able to handle them just fine. Just as Ronan's group completed their preparations and was about to move out, a gentle voice suddenly floated in from behind them. Your intentions are good, but I wouldn't recommend going about it this way. This isn't the right time yet. The moment he heard that voice, Ronan's entire body tensed. He hadn't sensed the elf's presence at all, which indicated that the other party's strength was anything but ordinary. Noticing Ronan's tension, the elf in front of him slowly revealed a gentle smile. There's no need to be so nervous. I'm just a priest living in these mountains, serving the divine soul known as Sinal. I mean no harm. Before we continue our conversation, let's find a different location. However, even after hearing this, Ronan remained on high alert. Without hesitation, he pressed La Mancha against the elf's throat. Ronan's voice was steady, but his eyes reflected a deep-seated mistrust. I've encountered too many people with bad intentions lately to trust anyone easily. So, do me a favor and repeat after me. Ayut is a worthless bastard. Shalantai appeared completely at a loss, but ultimately, he awkwardly echoed the phrase exactly as Ronan had said it. After saying it, he lowered his head in embarrassment. As a priest devoted to the gods, this is the first time in over 1,000 years of solitary life that I have uttered something so vulgar. It is truly shameful. Ronan and the others were stunned into silence. In other words, the elf before them had existed long before the empire was ever founded. Ronan's entire group, who had been prepared to move at any moment, was completely shaken by Shalantai's recent revelation. Ronan quickly recalled the words Shalantai had spoken earlier. He immediately asked, You just said you don't recommend that we eliminate those beastmen right now. Why is that? Upon hearing that, Shalantai's expression grew increasingly serious. The behavior of the beastmen had been quite strange lately. They were not nocturnal creatures, yet every night, without fail, they moved through the mountains. Even the ogres, who seldom venture beyond their own territory, have started to appear near the outer edge of the mountain range. All signs indicate that something significant is about to unfold. As he spoke, Shalantai raised a hand and pointed ahead. In an instant, the environment around them twisted violently. When they opened their eyes again, a vast and ancient palace loomed before them. Asher stared in complete disbelief at the scene before him. A barrier spell of this magnitude was beyond the capabilities of even most professors in Filian's magic department. Before long, Shalantai guided them to a strange, massive stone. The temple has plenty of empty rooms, so feel free to rest wherever you like. But Ronan had no intention of resting. He stepped forward immediately and asked urgently, "Mr. Shalantai, do you know where the Eye of Curse lies?" Shalantai gave him a thoughtful look. "Is this because of the curse inside you? No wonder I've sensed a dangerous aura within you all this time. We should talk privately." With that, Ronan followed Shalantai to a quiet courtyard. As Shalantai examined him, she spoke softly. "Ronan, you're not just an ordinary student, are you?" Ronan could only respond awkwardly. Even then, his hand unconsciously tightened around the mancha at his side. Shalantai appeared oblivious to this as he simply pushed a freshly brewed cup of tea toward him. "Your mind is too unsettled right now. Have some tea first. It will help." Ronan accepted the cup, but internally he remained on guard, questioning whether something had been mixed into it. Just as he hesitated, a clear, refreshing fragrance wafted up from the tea. Ronan's entire body suddenly froze. Dense patterns of magical veins appeared before his eyes, clearer than ever, as if he had suddenly been given a brand new pair of eyes. Observing his reaction, Shalantai showed no signs of surprise. He explained calmly that this is a spiritual herb so rare that, even within the magic ley veins, it is almost impossible to find. It has the power to force open suppressed meridians. Typically, this tea wouldn't produce such an extreme effect after just one cup. Your strong reaction is likely due to the curse within you. I'll prepare more of this herb for you. If you continue to drink it, the effect should improve even more. At that moment, Shalantai suddenly paused. His tone became more serious. "From now on, don't attempt to use the Eye of Curse to forcibly remove your curse. When the Eye of Curse erases a curse, it also consumes the user's life force in the process. Using it once or twice may not lead to significant consequences, but relying on it too heavily will ultimately cost you your life. Don't tell me you were unaware of that." Upon hearing this, Ronan was stunned. He had indeed known that the Eye of Curse carried such a side effect. Ronan was momentarily speechless. Shalantai continued gently, "I understand how you feel, Ronan, but the more anxious you are, the more important it is to slow down. Otherwise, one wrong step could lead to consequences you can never undo." Ronan silently nodded and finally loosened his grip on La Mancha. Professor Secret had mentioned something similar, that the curse within him would need to be addressed gradually. Perhaps he had indeed been too impatient lately. As Ronan gazed at the ever-calm and gentle Shalantai, he couldn't shake a peculiar sense of familiarity, and yet he was certain that in his previous life he had never met this person. With that thought in mind, Ronan finally stopped hiding his feelings. He picked up the tea and said quietly, "Thank you for the warning. I realize now that I have been too impatient lately. Recently, I've encountered far too many fanatics pursuing the stars." With that, Ronan raised the cup, prepared to drink it in one go. However, he failed to notice that Shalantai's expression had already darkened. Before long, night had completely fallen. Shalantai stood alone before the strange stone, his expression a mix of complicated emotions. The fanatics Ronan mentioned must be that group. Am I supposed to stand by and do nothing again? Or is Ronan the answer you're offering me? Just as Shalantai fell into deep contemplation, Ronan's voice suddenly rose from behind him. "Does that stone hold a special meaning?" The moment the subject was mentioned, a strange light flickered in Shalantai's eyes. "It is the divine statue of the god I serve, Sinel. Every 1,000 years, our order sends 1,000 physical embodiments like this one to Daknai, the holy land of the empire. The area is battered by wind and rain throughout the year, causing most stones to weather away in less than 200 years. However, every now and then, a rare few manage to endure for a full 1,000 years, demonstrating a resilience that transcends time itself. The truly sacred image of Lord Sinel resides in the proud soul that has taken refuge within one of those stones." At that moment, the corners of Shalantai's lips lifted on their own, forming a gentle smile. "I still vividly remember the day my brothers and I carried this divine statue back together. It's a shame that I'm now the only one left holding onto this faith. After all, dedicating an entire lifetime to a god who never responds, no matter how long you wait, is an incredibly challenging endeavor. There were moments when I wavered, contemplating the idea of abandoning my faith to live solely for myself. Whenever that happened, I would always experience the same strange feeling, a sense that I needed to stay. That feeling was this: one day, Lord Sinel's will, embodied within this divine statue, would become the stepping stone that saves the world." After saying this, Shalantai patted Ronan on the shoulder with evident delight. I believe that moment is very close now. The following day, every member of Ronan's team was enjoying the herbal tea that Shalantai had provided. Combined with the incredibly dense magic in the air, everyone's affinity for magic noticeably increased. Meanwhile, Ronan followed Shalantai up the mountain to collect herbs and seek out information. After several days, Ronan decided to bid farewell to Shalantai, clear out the Beastmen village below the mountain, and then return to the academy to prepare for the upcoming training expedition. Shalantai still looked deeply uneasy. Even now, I haven't figured out why those monsters are behaving so strangely. For safety's sake, I think you should wait a little longer. Hearing this, Ronan smiled and shook his head. Shalantai, please trust us. Besides, didn't you say yourself that those creatures are only acting strangely? Their strength hasn't increased, right? The others behind him quickly chimed in, insisting that they would all be careful. Seeing their determination, Ronan scratched his head and added, more importantly, our field training deadline is almost up. We need to get back to the academy and let everyone know we're safe. Unable to resist their insistence any longer, Shalantai finally nodded and raised her hand, casting a spell over them. With this magic, you'll be able to enter and leave the temple freely, without the barrier obstructing you. If anything dangerous occurs, return immediately. Before long, Ronan led everyone to the area near the Beastman village. What they discovered was the Beastmen gathered together, smugly dividing up plundered treasures, clear evidence that nearby towns had already fallen victim to their raids. The moment Ronan saw the scene, he lowered his voice and ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Shortly after, Asher used his telekinetic magic to set Maria and Brahm down on the ground. A few beastmen who noticed the disturbance let out furious roars and charged at them. Maria and Brahm engaged in combat simultaneously, their forms transforming into streaks of light. They charged directly into the beastmen, unleashing a wave of destruction upon them. Asher floated above, skillfully manipulating boulders and crashing them down onto the beastmen below. With their nearly flawless coordination, the three of them quickly decimated the entire beastman village. As he surveyed the horrific scenes spread across the ground, Asher's eyes turned red with concern, and he couldn't shake the feeling that such relentless killing would inevitably invite retribution one day. Just as Ronan was quietly comforting Asher, he found himself contemplating whether to increase the difficulty of the next mission. Sita suddenly tapped him gently with her small paw. It was clearly indicating that he should look to the side. Following Sita's indication, the group turned and saw that under a large tree not far away, someone was tied up. They were all instantly shocked to discover that the person bound there was a badly wounded elf. Ronan rushed to untie her, while Sita used her healing magic to tend to her injuries. After a while, the elf slowly opened her eyes, but as soon as she sensed the magic surrounding the group, a look of pure shock instantly spread across his face. Before she could speak, she suddenly clutched her chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. She grabbed Ronan's shoulder with desperate force, her voice filled with panic. I can sense Lord Shalantai's magic emanating from all of you. Does that mean you have emerged from the temple? Please take me to Lord Shalantai immediately. Those madmen are approaching, and if we waste any more time, Lord Shalantai's life will be at risk. Before Ronan could ask another question, the elf's body went limp and she collapsed unconscious. With no time to think, Ronan picked her up and rushed back to the temple. Even Shalantai was startled by the commotion. Ronan, why are you back so soon? Did something happen? Ronan immediately responded, we just rescued this prisoner from the Beastman village. She insisted that she absolutely had to see you, so I brought her here first. Upon hearing that, Shalantai looked curiously at the elf on Ronan's back. The moment he clearly saw the woman's face, he froze in place and his expression darkened. After carefully settling the elf down, Shalantai finally managed a faint smile and thanked Ronan. This time, I really owe you one, Ronan. If it weren't for you, I might have lost a precious member of my family. She is one of the few believers in this world who still has faith in Lord Sinal. Once, she was more devout than anyone else. Upon hearing that, Ronan scratched his head awkwardly. So who exactly are the madmen she was so desperately warning me about? Are they really a threat to your life? After hearing that, Shalantai's expression became noticeably more forlorn. To be honest, I don't fully understand them either. They are a religious group that worships an unknown entity as a god. Long ago, they concealed their identities and spread chaos throughout the continent. I can't be certain how long this organization has truly existed, but I do know they call themselves the Krakio Church. Over the years, many of their members have come searching for me. For the past few hundred years, there had been no sign of them at all. I thought they had given up trying to find me, so I never expected them to start moving again now. As Shalantai remained calm, it was Ronan who began to feel anxious instead. If those lunatics are after you, come with me and we can hide in the Imperial capital. Shalantai shook his head immediately, rejecting the idea without the slightest hesitation. No, I can't abandon the temple. This place carries the soul of Lord Sinel. Even if I ran away to another place, I would only bring disaster to innocent people. That's not a future I can accept. After saying that, he looked at Ronan with complete sincerity. So please, leave with your companions as soon as possible. I don't want to drag you all into this danger too. I'm asking you, promise me. Seeing his resolute demeanor, Ronan ceased his attempts to persuade him, and instead chose to return to the imperial capital to gather reinforcements. I have an incredibly strong older sister. I'll go get her right away. Until I return, Shalantai, make sure to hide well and avoid doing anything reckless. Ronan's overly tense demeanor actually made Shalantai chuckle softly. Speaking with heartfelt sincerity, he placed a ring into Ronan's hand, saying, "Take this as thanks for saving Brygia. If you ever visit the Dawn Magic Tower, please give this to Susu. You'll definitely find information there related to the curse within you." After that, Shalantai sincerely thanked Ronan once more, saying, "Thank you, truly. The few days I spent with you felt like a gift from heaven." Ronan scratched his head awkwardly. "It's not like we'll never see each other again. So why say something so sentimental? I'll be back soon, so make sure you stay safe." As soon as he finished speaking, Ronan's figure disappeared from the spot. But at the exact moment he disappeared, the smile on Shalantai's face also vanished, replaced by a cold and solemn expression. Shalantai slowly turned to look inside the room, his voice perfectly calm. "As someone who was once family, now that we've reunited after so long, shouldn't I be happy to see you? Or perhaps I should address you by your proper title, the church's assassin, Brygia." The moment those words were spoken, Brygia, who had been lying heavily wounded and unconscious, instantly recovered as if nothing had happened. As light distorted around her, her former elven appearance began to shift, and a sickly, crazed smile spread across her face. "It's been a long time, Shalantai. You've changed. To think you would actually pretend to heal me while secretly slipping me a paralytic poison." Shalantai's expression remained cold. "You, of all people, the shadow of Lemmaheim, put on that pitiful act of being captured by beast men. Compared to you, I'm perfectly normal." Brygia merely shrugged in contempt. "I couldn't help it. Meeting you in person is just too challenging. No matter how many magical beasts I manipulated to lure you out, you never took the bait." At that moment, a mocking smile spread across Brygia's face. "Just a few days ago, I noticed that those amusing little kids were all enveloped in your aura. I had initially planned to tear them to pieces to lure you out, but considering we were once fellow believers, I demonstrated tremendous restraint. Shouldn't you be thanking me?"